Hello everyone, Allie here, and welcome to the Gold Mine. Thank you so much for joining me here on another episode at Allie's Treasure Trove. Today we are getting into episode number 37 here of our Great Ace Attorney Chronicles playthrough with Great Ace Attorney 2 Resolve, Twisted Karma, and its last bow. Finally figured out, I guess, the proper name of this episode title. But this is Investigation Part 2. So last time we did have Trial Part 2, did discover that Gossip was, as we had predicted back in episode 35 or so, was actually Mr. Daily Vigil, Mrs. Vigil's husband that had went missing. And it turns out he had been missing because he got kidnapped and held hostage by those two red-headed League characters, and then was held overnight by police, since they were under the impression him being Gossip and then the little Red Riding Hood knockoff and Beppo were homeless, so they kept him overnight, so that way they had a place to stay and they could find him, make sure they showed up for court. So that's why he was missing for a couple days. I mean, we know why he was missing the first day, because he got kidnapped. And then he was gone for a second day because of the trial stuff, so that's why Mrs. Vigil was like, I haven't heard from him. It's like, because he literally couldn't reach out to her. Because he doesn't work in the prison. Got fired 10 years ago for aiding and abetting the escape of the professor. That's where we landed off. He had some memories reawaken, and he passed out, and the judge freaked out and called off court for the day. So, not sure what we're going to be investigating here, but I'm very curious to find out, as it is 3:38 p.m. and we're back in Sholmes' suite. I'm assuming we're going to talk things over with Sholmes, and perhaps even Iris have some info to weigh in and give her advice, maybe. But let's see here. Yo, what's up, Susato? I still can't quite believe what just happened. I know! I inquired with the bailiff after the court session was adjourned, and it seems Mr. Vigil was taken to the hospital to recover. Right. Spooky music. 10 years ago now, Mr. Vigil attempted to commit suicide by jumping out of the window of the prison governor's office. Alright, that's what I thought was happening. But I'm glad they gave for sure, because they had this little flashback where he started panicking and ran towards the window. From his perspective, all we saw was breaking glass, and so the question is, did he do it, or did he not do it? I don't know. But ever since then, he's completely blocked the memory of those events from his mind. Nobody knew his secrets. Not his family, not even the man himself. But I forced it out into the open. Was it wrong of me to do that? Did I overstep the mark, I wonder? Runo! Hey, Runo, you in there? Oh, Iris, sorry, I was moping. You were miles away. Anyway, I brewed a fast pot of soothing tea for you. Oh, thank you. You better like my special blend now that I can't give it to Gregsy. You and Susie have had an exhausting day so far, haven't you? No! Thank you, Iris. How thoughtful of you. Do you happen to know where Mr. Sholmes is? When we came out of the courtroom back into the defendant's antechamber, he disappeared. I was wondering why we didn't just start there. I guess if Sholmes ran off, that makes sense. Oh, no, I don't know. He just suddenly sprang to his feet and left. All he said was, I must leave. I wonder... No. I heard the word Sholmes, and I gave Susato voice, Sholmes voice. I wonder if he's pursuing the mystery of Inspector Gregson's death. Well, you know what Hurley's always saying, don't you? There are mysteries in this world that should perhaps never be solved. For the construction of a solution comes only at the expense of the destruction of something else. What does that mean? He knows very well that when you open someone else's old wounds, you often open your own too. But he just can't take his own advice and leave well alone. Solving mysteries is too important to him. That's so true. But that's what I like about Hurley after all. And I suppose that's the lot of a great detective in some ways. So then, let's have tea, and then I'll give you a hand. Oh, do you have time, Iris? Yes, I finished this month's manuscript at last, with barely a day to spare before the deadline. Oh, I'm so looking forward to it. A brand new story to read in the adventures of Herlock Sholmes. You know, I always hide Hurley's violins in the days before I have a deadline. You do? Poor Mr. Sholmes. I'm sure that's very wise, Iris. How sensible of you. Now then, my dear fellows, let's make a plan of action before we continue our investigation. Now, what about tea, Iris? We're supposed to be having tea. So, how did it go in court this morning? Well, you still don't know the truth about what really happens, but one thing is increasingly clear. Lord Van Zeeks definitely didn't do it. Oh, goody! Yeah, yes, that's right! We managed to uncover several new facts as well! Oh, really? And there was another development, too. Cosma. Yes, it's quite clear now. The rain is gone. That Cosmo-sama is not himself. The way he's acting, it's almost as if he's possessed. By the Reaper. I know. I mean, at the end of the proceedings earlier, he was like a bloodhound the way he was chasing down Mr. Vigil's forgotten past. He's not normally so mercilessly persistent. What's going on in his head, I wonder? I really need to sit down with Cosmo and try to understand what he's going through. If Gregson was really murdered the day before his body was discovered, then Lord Van Zeeks has to be innocent, you see? What? The day before? Well, that should be easy enough to work out, just by examining the corpse, surely. Yes, you would expect so, but curiously, no time of death was included in the autopsy report. That is curious. There are still unanswered questions about Lord Van Zeeks, though, aren't there? Do you mean? I mean, what was he doing there on Fresno Street that day in the first place? Well, according to the man's testimony, he said he was investigating Inspector Gregson, didn't he? And it turns out that little room was actually the inspector's secret office. Ooh, that sounds like it has all the makings of a wonderfully devilish plot. But then, why was that notice board in there covered in all those particular papers? Papers about cases with a link to the Reaper. I'm starting to get a bad feeling about all of this. Oh dear, that sounds more like something horribly devilish. We must start by looking into Inspector Gregson's movement of late. I never imagined I might have to be investigating an inspector's movements. Well, according to the entry in his diary, he was carrying out an incognito investigation of the Red-Headed League the day before his death. Oh, you mean he was doing the same as Hurley? Well, Mr. Sholmes was trying to apply, whereas the inspector was supposed to be investigating. I do wish it had been the other way around. Anyway, as it turns out, the inspector who went to investigate the Red-Headed League that day wasn't actually Gregson at all. It was Mr. Vigil, in possession of Gregson's identification. You know what that sounds like to me? Establishing an alibi. Oh my! Yes, you're absolutely right, Iris! But why would Gregson need an alibi? It would appear that the inspector had something to do that he wished to keep secret. I don't believe it. I always thought he was just a harmless lover of fish and chips. But perhaps they were seasoned with something a little more potent than salt and vinegar. I think perhaps we should try to move away from food analogies. Well, anyway, if Lord Van Zeeks felt the need to investigate Gregson... Yes, I agree. We must try to find out what he knows. We gotta go talk to Van Zeeks. Yo, what's up, prison boy? Vigil, you say? Isn't that the name of the lady who came to visit Hurley yesterday? That's right! To ask Mr. Sholmes if he would help her to find her missing husband. Only Mr. Sholmes completely passed the buck to us. Actually, didn't you say that Mr. Vigil had been taken to the hospital? Do you know which one? It's St. Sinner's! They sent him there in particular to propagate his trauma since we learned recently that it's right next to the prison. I'm starting to wonder if all the other hospitals in London have closed down. But that's amazing, Bruno! You found the lady's husband already! Well, I suppose I have, by accident. And 10 years ago, while Mr. Vigil was the chief warder at the prison, he was responsible for overseeing the professor's incarceration. No! So when the convict escaped, he was held responsible and immediately dismissed. Ugh, sometimes I really don't want to grow up. There's more. For 10 years after that, while he was ostensibly working as a peddler, he had another secret job. He was paid by Gregson to be his stand-in, to impersonate the inspector. To impersonate Gregsy, but why? And I have absolutely no idea. Ugh, Jenny was right. I'm starting to think all adults are up to no good now. And including you, Bruno. What did I do? I haven't paid anyone to impersonate me. That means he has ties to the professor and to Inspector Gregson, though. So I do think we ought to pay him a visit, don't you? Back to St. Sinners, then. The Rat Hospital. Well, I think it's clear what we need to do, isn't it? Let us investigate, my dear fellows. No, Iris! You're even more enthusiastic than usual today. If anyone has anything to hide, my special Wilson shooting iron will set them straight. That's water pistol? It's stuff full of a piping hot extra special blend of mine. And I'm quite sure it'll be very effective. I'd better be careful not to hide anything. Well, it feels a little strange that Mr. Shulbs is nowhere to be seen, but still. Let's go and see what we can find out. Yes! Alright, Sidekick Iris is back. Without her weird Mickey Mouse costume. Oh, we gotta look at her. We gotta look at her board. Alright, fine. Alright, looked at the board. Alright, we can't go to any of these. Let's go hang out at the prison. What's up, my dear fellow? Oh, no, Iris's stupid hat's back. No. Lord Van Zeeks is reading, look! He doesn't seem to like he wants visitors, does he? But he must have noticed that we're here, surely. What do you Nipponese want? That's no way to greet the lawyer who's trying his hardest to prove your innocence, is it? Perhaps not. I apologize. So, what can I do for you, Mr. Naruhodo? Lord Van Zeeks, speaking earnestly! Oh, the fog will lift over London for the first time in months tomorrow. This does feel very, very strange. And I must say, I was impressed. Oh, well, thank you. Not by you, by your fellow Nipponese. Your prosecutor friend. Oh, I see, yes. And it's sardonic, don't you think? For a man such as me, so loathing of the Nipponese, to be entirely at the mercy of the two of you. I suppose. And it's retribution for having played the part of the Reaper all these years. Played the part? Depressing prison music. You once told me that you gladly allowed people to believe you were the Reaper, because it helped reduce the amount of serious crime that took place in London. If keeping quiet and playing the part benefits the cause I myself am committed to pursuing, then why would I choose to say anything? But the henchman of a criminal killed by the Reaper attacked you only the other day. And that was just the most recent of many attempts on your life, wasn't it? Someone is clearly profiting from your silence about all this. Someone is using you. Someone named Lord Strongheart. Believe me, ever since the Reaper first appeared, I've been doing my utmost to expose him. Or rather, expose the organization. Ah! It's a whole organization! It's inconceivable that all those accidents were orchestrated by one man. No, the Reaper always appears to have very accurate information about the accused in each case, which can only mean that somebody at Scotland Yard is involved. Somebody? You can't mean? It's taken me many years, but I've finally identified the central figure in this Reaper organization. Now, we're about to get the loudest "yeah, boy" y'all have ever heard when he said male Strongheart, and then he didn't. Crippling disappointment. It's not Gregson. Gregson's not the Reaper. That's BS. That's no. Stephen and New Gear laughed at me in chat. No, he's memeing. He doesn't know. He's confused. He doesn't know what he's talking about. Van Zeeks doesn't know what he's talking about. It's not Gregson. No. We're deleting this plot point. Tobias Gregson. No! Gregson, the Reaper? Like, no offense to Gregson, I don't know that Gregson's smart enough to be the Reaper. So, the reason you were investigating Inspector Gregson is because you intended to expose him as the Reaper? As I said, the Reaper of the Bailey is no single person. It's a highly secret organization with close ties to Scotland Yard. But there's no doubt that Gregson was a key member of that organization. I don't believe it! Are you saying that that he was behind all those awful criminals meeting there? Gregson didn't do the dirty work himself. Oh! He was the tactician. His job was to covertly investigate the marks and plot their assassinations. In order to do that without arousing suspicion, he regularly needed a firm alibi. Which is where Mr. Vigil came in, posing as the inspector. Vigil knows nothing of the Reaper. But the room he rents on Fresno Street was almost certainly the headquarters of the operation. Gregson would have met the assassin there for briefings. So we don't actually know who carried out the killings, then? Actually, I do have a name. You what? Well, if you can name the man, you have the true identity of the Reaper already! Or, if I can name the woman. Oh! She's a young woman by the name of Assassin. These puns are horrible. Wait, what? Shin? You know, since we knew her first initial was A, I'm like, I swear if this lady's name is Assassin, I'm gonna lose my mind. And it was. Assassin. The true name of a terrifying killer I only know too well. She came to Japan posing as a visiting student and murdered Dr. John H. Wilson. Then, just when it seemed that diplomatic protection would help her escape Japan and conviction, the mysterious woman was herself, murdered in a small summer beach hut. And that woman was actually the Reaper of the Bailey. That don't make sense. Mr. Naruhodo, this perhaps isn't the place to discuss? No, of course not. We can't mention it here. The fact that she killed Dr. John H. Wilson. Because Iris doesn't know, and it's very likely that the man was her father. Assassin! I should let father know at once! Yes, I agree. Cosmo, isn't it? Cosmo Sogi. You say he's a friend of yours. My best friend. He's the whole reason I got to come to Britain. And it was all on his merits. And I have nothing but respect for him. Yes, I understand that only the very best students are selected for such opportunities. And I had a fine demonstration of how sharp he is in the proceedings earlier today. He missed nothing. In fact, his flawless performance very much reminded me of his father. Genshin Asogi, the professor. It's true that the aristocracy at the time was the root of numerous grave societal problems. They were abusing their power, playing with the common man as pawns in politics, in economics, in war. In many ways, Asogi was carving out a canker from society that we British couldn't deal with ourselves. Ah, I see. but that's precisely why it makes no sense. Clint Van Zeeks was a noble and upstanding man. He wasn't corrupt. Why did that damn Nipponese have to go and take my brother's life? In spite of having what saved mine. You saved your life? How did that happen? It was 10 years ago, on a foggy night. What was to be the professor's final strike had sent a wave of panic through the capital. So Clint Van Zeeks had already been killed at this point then. Genshin and I were walking down some back streets at a late hour. Of course, at that point, I had no idea of the true nature of the man at my side. All of a sudden... Don't make a peep, you're coming with us. We were surrounded. All of our assailants were armed with pistols, their faces obscured by scarves. Clint was not only from noble heritage, he was a brilliant prosecutor as well. The scum of London hated the sight of him, and they had no sympathy for his younger brother either. I'd been targeted several times before already. Yeah, it's Van Zeeks, all right, we've got him. I could hear them murmuring amongst themselves. I knew they were after me. But just when I thought my time had come. If I let them kill you, Clint would never forgive me. It was the Sogi's voice, just a whisper in my ear. After that, I don't remember exactly what happened. The next thing I knew, there was silence all around. Genshin lay on the cobbled street. Blood was seeping from his left hand. He'd shielded me. Two days later, they arrested him on suspicion of being London's most notorious mass murderer ever, the Professor. How awful for you! All at once, I lost the brother I revered, and the foreign friend I held in such high regard. And I'm so sorry, Lord Van Zeeks. That's the end of my miserable tale. I never thought I'd recount it to anyone. Well, thank you for confiding in me, and Iris and Susato. The Professor, the Reaper, and Inspector Gregson. And I wonder just how intimately related they all are. And I still can't quite believe that Gregson was essentially the Reaper, giving assassination orders to Giselle Bratt. Mr. Naruhodo, let's go and inform my father. I'm sure our government will want to hear about this new information. Oh, that means I get to meet your daddy, Susie. Hurrah! Yes, all right. Let's head back to the Great Waterloo Hotel, then. I don't know about this one. I don't know. I mean, we'll see, but that seems... I don't know about that one. I thought it yesterday, and I think it again today. This place is so princely. It's a wild guess, but I have a feeling you'll think the same tomorrow, too. My tea has a finer fragrance than whatever they're serving in the tea room here, though, wouldn't you say? Ah, look how we have here. This is an unexpected pleasure. Oh, this man just slinking around. Ah! Father! Ooh, is this your daddy, Susie? How lovely. What a charming young lady. And you are? Oh, is Susato's dad gonna spill the beans? Ah, really? So you're the author of The Adventures of Sherlock Sholmes, are you? That's me, Iris Wilson, at your service, sir. Susie's been such a wonderful friend to me over the last year, you know. Well, Miss Wilson, I must say I read your work regularly with much interest. Iris actually lives with Mr. Sholmes, you know, Father. Is that so? Well, perhaps that goes some way to explaining that bright look in your eyes. You wouldn't be smiling so airily if you knew just how bright she is, believe me. Now then, young Naruhodo, it was a pleasure seeing you in action earlier. As an invitee of the symposium, I was allowed to observe from the gallery after I twisted some arms. And I must say, it was a truly exemplary performance. Oh, well, thank you very much. Although I'm fairly sure you admitted by Cosma on the end there. No, please don't misunderstand. It was you who impressed me. Really? You didn't miss a step against the Sogi, and we all know how capable he is. Really, to have matured into such a fine defense lawyer in less than a year is quite extraordinary. It's very kind of you to say so. And really nice to hear. What I saw in court today confirmed what I've been hoping for. The favor I mentioned yesterday, Mr. Naruhodo, and I trust you haven't forgotten. Oh, no, you didn't mention something, didn't you? But first, we have something to report, Father. Of course. Shall we take tea while we discuss matters further? I wonder where Judge Jigoku has gotten to. Father, do you know about the so-called Reaper of the Bailey? I've heard rumors. Some members of the judiciary explained it all to me yesterday. And of course, when I was a visiting student here in London, the Reaper was yet to emerge. Right, he didn't appear until after that case when the visiting students had already returned home. Lord Van Zeeks, he was in the dock today. And that was Barack, the younger brother of Clint Van Zeeks, I believe. That's right! And he's known throughout London as the Reaper, as you've heard. But the truth is, it wasn't him behind all those mysterious deaths. It was somebody else. I see. But what you're saying is, there's been a professional killer at work here. Exactly. Someone by the name of Asashin, in fact. And I beg your pardon. Did you say Asashin? You mean that Giselle Brat woman who was responsible for killing my great friend? Oh no! A friend of yours was killed! Professor Mikotaba, I think perhaps we shouldn't discuss this right now. Because the friend the professor's talking about is Dr. John H. Wilson. Somebody just tell Iris already, for goodness sake. It's not something we want Iris to find out about. Not like this, anyway. Somebody tell her. I've just remembered something. Biscuits! This hotel has the most delicious looking biscuits. That was rather out of the blue. She's doing this deliberately. I think I'll go and see if I can purchase some. I wonder, would you like to come too, Iris? Oh, yes. You just try to leave me behind. So that young girl is called Iris Wilson, is she? Yes, that's right. And she's the author of all those adventure stories starring the great Detective Sholmes. But the name of the credited author isn't Iris, is it? It's Dr. John H. Wilson. Yes, I know. That's the name of her father, you see. Her father? Dr. John H. Wilson. And I was deeply indebted to the man for all the kindness he showed me during my time in London. That's why I was keen to reciprocate and invite him to the Imperial Yume University 4 years ago. But he was murdered last year by Giselle Brat. Why? Why would the hand of the Reaper stretch all the way to Japan? Iris knows nothing about that case, but it seems very likely that the victim, Dr. Wilson, was her father. Well, I can't say that we ever spoke about his family, so I don't know if he had a daughter or not. But I think I can say with some certainty that he was never the great detective's partner. So, it could have been another Dr. Wilson, you think? Well, John and Wilson are both common names after all. Still, it's probably best not to mention this to the young lady until we can be sure. That's what we thought, yes. We're back! With cinnamon biscuits! Ooh, cinnamon biscuits sound good. They smell delicious, Iris. I think cinnamon will go very well with the tea they serve here. Don't you, Susie? Yes! I'm sure you're right, Iris! I haven't seen Judge Chigoku for a while, have you? Guilty! Ha 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 ha! But that guilty is still ringing in my ears. Now you mention it, I haven't seen him since this morning either. Maybe I was right, Judge gets whacked. I don't know. And I suppose since the symposium's opening was postponed, he'll have gone to explore at the Great Exhibition. That reminds me of something you mentioned yesterday. About Judge Chigoku having once been in the dock himself. Yes. It was all tied up with that accursed trial. The closed trial of Kazuma's father. Seishiro was trying to mitigate Genshin's guilt, so he took the stand to testify. But he got a little carried away and, naturally managed to break the witness stand. Oh my! He also said some contemptuous words about the British Empire, for which he was charged. Oh dear, although it's worryingly easy to imagine him doing that. Well, it was all alright in the end. He was acquitted and returned home to Japan together. Thank goodness! Yes, talking of Seishiro. I have a copy of the photograph we all took together here yesterday, please. Oh, what a lovely picture! It certainly seems to shout, we've arrived in Britain. Uh-oh. Did they kill Judge Jigoku? Is that why this is getting added to evidence? Are we supposed to be looking for something in this picture? Or is it just sometimes we put stuff in the court record for no reason? I don't know. None of us had any idea what was coming when we took that, did we? No, that's so true. So, you mentioned a favor that you'd like to ask me. Well, this fateful trial you're fighting, one way or another, it will be over before long. And when it is, I'd like you to accompany me back to Japan. You want me to do... What? Father! What's the meaning of this? Now, Susato, you should understand. You've seen how our courts work firsthand. Japan's judicial system is in its infancy, especially when it comes to defense. Oh, you mean... The Supreme Court of Judicature is in desperate need of a good defense lawyer. As soon as possible. Really quite urgently, in fact. But I've not even been in London a year yet. And I've read all of Susato's reports. I'm well aware of your extraordinary talents. And having seen you in action with my own eyes earlier today, there's no question. You, Naruhodo, are precisely the man our country needs. So, you'd be leaving then, Runo? But then, what am I supposed to do, Father? You came here to serve as Asogi's judicial assistant. No, yes, she's supposed to be Kazuma's assistant. Our government is still in the process of deciding how to best deal with this situation, though. You've always chosen your own path, Susato, and I trust your judgment. In this matter also. Father! Please, the pair of you, don't look so downcast. It's merely a suggestion, you understand? A hope, if I'm honest, but I won't force you. All I ask is that you consider it, and come to a decision by the time this trial concludes. Yes, all right. You won't leave, will you, Runo? The thought hadn't even crossed my mind. Up until now, I've just been trying to do what I believe to be Kazuma's will. But it turns out that he's still alive, so... Where does that leave me? Well, if you'll excuse me now, I need to telegram government ministers and the Japanese police with this information about Asashin. Of course, Father! Thank you! And I look forward to next month's installment, Miss Wilson. Oh good, please do come back to Baker Street sometime, won't you? We'd love to entertain you. Jenny can even teach you how to steal stuff. I would be delighted. And the best of luck for tomorrow, Naruhodo. And give my suggestion your full consideration, won't you? Yes, I will. Going back home. You know, Kazuma-sama has always meant a great deal to my father. I'm sure he'd love the chance to meet with him and talk to him about all of this. Yes, no doubt. Asashin. Of course, it's so obvious.
How could I have neglected to consider the possibility before now?
Ah, Mr. Sholmes! Hurley, where have you been?
Why, I joined you all for tea, of course. What an extraordinary question.
He's spying on us. I didn't notice you at all!
No matter. Anyway, to more pressing concerns, Mr. Naruhodo.
No, yes?
I must dispatch a telegram to your country at once. It is a matter of much urgency.
To Japan, you mean?
Tell me, to whom can I entrust the task? Quickly now, who?
Well, my father has just now left to send a telegram to the Imperial Police Bureau of Japan himself.
I see. Well, he looked reliable enough for a bearded fellow.
I don't think what father sports could be considered a beard, Mr. Sholmes.
There's not a moment to lose. Kindly ask your trusty unshaven father to see this as sent.
I will, but what is it?
No questions at this time, if you please, Miss Susato. All we can do is pray. Not for once. My deduction is awry.
Doesn't that imply that your deductions are normally correct, Mr. Sholmes?
Which isn't exactly. Now then, you may be surprised to learn that I am a very busy man. And I certainly have no time to hide behind settees and eavesdrop on other people's conversations.
So that's what joining us for tea meant.
I leave the sending of this in your hands then, my dear fellows.
Ah, wait a minute, it's Mr. Sholmes. He just sort of ran off, didn't he? Not at quite a pace. And left the unpaid bill for his tea behind, too. I must catch up with father at the telegraph office at once. And I'll run and call us a cab for straight away. They just zoomed out of there. And there was me thinking everyone would be clamoring to pay Mr. Sholmes' bill. And then just leave the bill. Go hang out with, Mr. Vigil. So we're in Ward 3. This is the ward where Mr. Vigil was brought, apparently. To be frank, I'm a little worried about seeing him again. Nah, I'm the lawyer. Hello again. Are you feeling better now, Mr. Vigil? Yes, thank you. Somewhat better. I'm so sorry to have caused you to... it was because of me. If I hadn't exposed your secret and forced you to remember things you'd obviously tried to forget. This man's so dramatic, too. I like him slapping the podium and his hands hurt. And the prosecutor was here until a few moments ago, too. You just missed him. Oh, Cosmo beat us to it. And he said much the same as you. He was very apologetic. But the truth is, I brought this all upon myself. Please, don't think like that. Keeping it from Evie, my wife, all these years, I've carried such a sense of guilt. But that's not the worst of it. And over time, I obviously came to deceive myself as well. You mean about your dismissal? Looking back now, I'm beginning to think that perhaps Inspector Gregson didn't stumble across me by accident at all. He compensated me so generously for acting as a stand-in. And was clearly concerned for my well-being and doing what he could to help. So perhaps Gregson knew exactly what had become of Mr. Vigil all along then. And I'm sure this is just deserts for 10 years of lies and deception, but... It wasn't me that helped the professor escape 10 years ago. It wasn't me. I swear it. And I swear it's true. Oh, Mr. Vigil! And I'm sure you'd rather not dredge up even more from your past at this time, but if possible, could you tell us exactly what really happened? I want to, and I need to get all this off my chest. I just want someone to tell me what I should have done. Inspector Gregson was obviously engaged in a special operation of some sort. He was investigating something that even Scotland Yard couldn't know about. Details of the Reaper's marks, yes. And it was when he had to carry out those investigations that I would take his identification and impersonate him. And you'd pretend to be the inspector and carry out investigations on his behalf. Oh no, never. A common street peddler couldn't possibly carry out a proper police investigation. All I would do is go to the specified location and make a little hoo-ha. Just something to leave an impression, so everyone there would think, ah, a detective called Gregson was here.
So, that's what you were doing on the day prior to the incident?
Yes, he asked me to make an appearance at the park on Lime Street for the Red-Headed League event. So as usual, I flashed the inspector's identification around and was very vocal about my presence.
But then you were taken prisoner by those red-headed fraudsters.
Yes. So, you would always make a point of showing Gregson's identification and generally being loud. That's what the inspector asked me to do, yes.
Well, that's one way of becoming a legendary detective, I suppose. Not a good one, though.
As you know, I suffered this bruising around my neck at their hands. But the following day, they kept their word and released me, without returning the inspector's identification to you, however. We had arranged to meet in the Fresno Street room at 5 that day so I could report back to the inspector. But at the agreed time, that's when I heard the gunshot. It was at midnight on 17th of June, 10 years ago. And that was the time scheduled for the execution. But the professor's execution never actually took place, did it?
Or rather, the execution itself might have been used to effect the plan of escape. I hardly dare to imagine what a chilling plan it was.
Markley was renowned for being the highest security prison in the country. Everything that went in or out of the place was searched multiple times. But there was one notable exception. Or rather, one notable loophole. Something that was never questioned. I have a feeling I know what that loophole was now. The coffins into which bodies of the executed convicts were placed, correct? Yes. Once the coroner had confirmed the death of a condemned convict, the body was taken in its coffin for immediate burial in the Lowgate Cemetery just behind the prison. The chief warder first had to sign the necessary papers. And after that, no member of staff was permitted to touch the coffin containing the body again. When executions took place, only the executioner and the coroner were permitted inside the chamber. I would wait in the adjacent room for word that the condemned convict was dead. And on that occasion, once I had the confirmation, I went into the mortuary to find the lone coffin as usual. The procedure was that I would sign the paperwork having checked the coffin, then nail it shut. But for some reason that day, the coffin was already nailed shut.
No!
I didn't think anything of it at the time. I assumed that my deputy must have checked the coffin and nailed it shut before I arrived. So, you mean the coffin contained... Yes, I could only imagine that Asogi, having escaped his execution somehow, was alive inside the coffin. And the coffin was then taken out through the main gates and deposited in Lowgate Cemetery.
Presumably there wouldn't have been enough air inside to breathe for long.
So in the early hours following the burial, somebody dug up the coffin again to set Genshin free.
But in the end, he was fatally shot in the graveyard anyway. What on earth really happened in Lowgate Cemetery that night, I wonder?
And I'm afraid I really don't know. And all I can say with certainty are two things. Masogi couldn't possibly have escaped that way without help from somebody working in the prison. And that somebody was not me. And obviously, you knew the man then. The professor, I mean. Genshin Asogi. Yes, I remember him well, in fact. Would you mind telling us what you know? Well, having been condemned to death as he was, any contact I had with the man was short, obviously. After that trial, which was carried out behind closed doors, attended only by elite members of the judiciary, and they called for his execution to be carried out at the earliest possible opportunity. And the outcome of the trial was set from the beginning, wasn't it?
It was a time of delicate diplomacy, when Britain and Japan were in the process of signing an important treaty. That meant that this potentially destabilizing case had to be dealt with swiftly and discreetly.
The man had less than a week in total. As I was the chief warder, I oversaw his short stay in the cells until his final hour. And I remember being struck deeply by his noble character and incredible resilience. What do you mean, exactly? He was a killer of many men, but he was always quiet and polite. He was a gentleman and a man of intellect. In fact, I couldn't bring myself to believe what he'd done, so I asked him one day. Those 5 members of the aristocracy whose lives were taken, were you really responsible? Interesting. I'm guilty of the unforgivable crime of ending another human's life, yes. The following day, the closed trial took place, and the verdict was no surprise. Guilty. That night, when he was brought back to his cell, I saw something. Something unusual. Something unusual? What? The last will and testament of Genshin Asogi. As I said, it was on the night following his trial, after he'd been found guilty. I was doing the rounds of the cells, and when I looked into Asogi's, I noticed that he seemed to have a sheet of paper in his hand. Ah, his last will and testament then, presumably. Soon as he noticed me, he hurriedly shoved it behind his back.
But why did you find that so unusual? Isn't it normal for a man to pen a will when he knows his death is nigh?
Yes, that's true. But there were special conditions to Asogi's incarceration, you see. What sort of conditions? Well, even though he was held in a cell designed for condemned inmates, he was allowed to keep his personal effects with him, with one exception. Really, he was allowed his things? That is unusual, certainly. And of course, he'd been convicted of killing 5 members of the aristocracy. But at the same time, he was a guest in our country from the Empire of Japan. The powers that be were determined that his final days should be needlessly uncomfortable.
And what was the exception you mentioned? To the personal effects he was allowed?
That's the point. He wasn't permitted to have writing materials. Specifically, no pens or paper.
So, he was prevented from leaving any written record of what had happened to him?
Yes, that was the long and short of it. And I have no idea where he obtained that paper. Any writing materials would have been confiscated from him upon his incarceration. And as I said, he hid the paper behind his back, and then he pleaded with me. What did you just hide behind your back? Please, turn a blind eye. This is my lifeline. But you know it's against the rules. You're the only one person who's seen, if you just agree to keep quiet. Alright then, well, what's on that paper? The last will and testament. This will is the only weapon I have left now. How can a will be a weapon? So I decided to pretend I'd seen nothing, and I let him keep his will. But then, later, it just seemed to vanish without a trace. What? What do you mean? It vanished?
It would seem that isn't the end of the story of this mysterious will.
And I was the only person who saw Sogi's will, but somehow it disappeared. It was after Asogi's execution, which was actually an elaborate jailbreak. The warders gathered up Asogi's possessions that were in his cell. They were all to be sent back to his family home in Japan, you see.
To poor Kazuma-sama?
And you're saying that it wasn't anywhere to be found among his personal effects? The will, I mean? That's right. No, I didn't search through them myself. But Governor Kainen was livid. He was screaming, "It can't have disappeared completely."
That doesn't quite make sense, though. It doesn't.
In what way?
Well, we'd understood that only Mr. Vigil was aware of the will's existence. In which case, how did the prison governor know to look for it?
Oh, yes, you're right. I really don't know how he knew. But it certainly seemed as though he knew of the will's existence from the outset. Only he didn't refer to it as a will. What he said was the Asogi Papers. The Asogi Papers? I really can't tell you anything of the subsequent evident events. Because, well, of what happened. Your dismissal and the way you blocked it all from your memory. I'd forgotten all this until today. And I don't suppose it's relevant to the case, though. Well, anyway, thank you very much for sharing it with us, Mr. Vigil. We're very grateful. I'm afraid there's really little more I can tell you. My wife Evie will be here shortly, so I do hope I don't appear rude, but... No, not at all. Thank you again.
But what will become of you now?
Well, impersonating a police officer is a criminal offense, of course. I imagine that once I'm fully recovered, I shall be arrested. I'm so sorry. Don't be, please. This was all my own doing. I always knew that this day would come. Well, I wish you well. Goodbye, Mr. Vigil. Nah. Before you go, there's just one thing. No, yes? What is it? Asogi Papers. I'd be very grateful if you'd make no mention of the things I told you about them. Presumably for some good reason. And that's my understanding that their very existence is a closely guarded secret. And if it became known that I'd remembered, well, it could be rather troublesome, I think. I understand. Some sort of will that Genshin Asogi penned just before his death, which the man himself claimed was his last weapon. I wonder, perhaps it had something to do with his plan to escape. If there's anyone who might know more about a document that Cosmo's father left behind,
it would be Mr. Vigil's governor! Then we know precisely where we must go! Back to Barclay Prison!
I feel like he had to have written out what happened. Right, that's what it has to be. It has to be the story of what really happened, and that's why it's hidden. Why this unblock out? That's suspicious. Oh, back again, are you? Yes, hello. I've heard all about your investigations. Read the report just now. You found them, eh, Vigil? Yes, luckily. Well, anywho, the laddie doesn't work here no more, so your case is naught to do with Barclay. Now, wouldn't they like you to get in the wrong idea about that? Of course, yes. Mr. Vigil stopped working here 10 years ago now, so... Yes, we've seen his dismissal notice, haven't we? He was given the chop. Hey, Kimmer. You can very well. So how about we handcuff Biscuit? Oh, they really are like little handcuffs. And as hard as irons, too. Still, Biscuits. Now, what's brought you down here today? Well, there's something else we'd like to ask you about, actually. Is that so? We believe there might have been a document that disappeared from Genshin Asogi's cell. And I think it's been called the Asogi Papers or something. Did I no say Greg's death had naught to do with things that might have happened in Barclay? Leave the past in the past, laddie. Let's not fool a boot with relevant details. His expression changed completely. We're clearly onto something here. Doot, 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 doot. That murderer's botched execution and the whole miserable escape. They were Barclay's darkest hour, eh? A shocking embarrassment. Because the convict had a collaborator on the prison staff, you mean? Aye, for shame. The coroner confirmed the death of the man after his execution, Courtney Scythe, and my chief warder at the time, Vigil, who was in charge of the whole affair. But Mr. Vigil says he didn't know anything about it. The rascal wouldn't they say otherwise, eh? More handcuffs? Oh, how could I say no? You can never have too much iron in your diet.
When Mr. Vigil was handed his dismissal notice as a result of what had happened, he was so despairing he jumped out of your office window, didn't he?
I didn't like to say, but that's just Vigil trying to get out of it. Do you no think he wouldn't they jump from the shock of his crimes being exposed, eh? I do. You wouldn't they say otherwise though, would you? Of course, I can't shun all responsibility myself. Shouldn't they let him deceive me? And actually, there's barely anybody that kens what went on the time and now. With Gregson having been murdered and Dr. Scythe forbidden from having any visitors. No visitors? Someone obviously doesn't want her giving anything away. Well, we're not going home empty-handed. And I wouldn't dream of sending you back here with naught, Kimmer. Hey, I'd take a handcuff or two. Oh, well, it would be rude to say no. Wouldn't want to become an anemic. I suppose there's anybody who might still ken the boot what happened back then. It'd be that lass from the forensic division, Maria Gorey. Oh, the lady who didn't put a time of death on the new autopsy report. Maria Gorey. Aye, Scythe's daughter. She didn't have no more, just the one. The wee barons followed her in the ma'am's footsteps. You didn't ever see her without a scalpel in her hand. Ah.
Mama! Can I cut up this Japanese one? Mama, what is this?
Ah, where did she spring from? And did she just call the doctor Mama? Dr. Sai's daughter, Maria Gorey. We could do with talking to her. I'd rather not, personally, but... So, she's Dr. Sai's daughter, but her surname is Gorey. Aye, there's some family history, I'm sure, but I didn't ken the ins and outs of it. She grew up watching her ma'am working with the bodies of folk that died in strange circumstances, and decided to do the same with her own life. I understand it myself.
Perhaps she was driven by a deep respect for her mother.
Perhaps. Anywho, she was in charge of Gregson's autopsy, I believe. Right, and the coroner responsible for this incomplete report. Someone told me once that the wee lassie always loved their ma'am's stories about cutting up bodies. There was even a rumor she used to listen to the funeral march as a lullaby.
Well, then perhaps her mother might have told her about the autopsy from the case 10 years ago.
Aye, I'd say there's a fighting chance at least. And after all, that was a life-changing case for all of us. We really need to speak to Miss Gorey herself about this, I think. Well, thank you very much. I'm no happy about any part of this. Took years for Londoners to finally forget the whole professor business. Can you no give up on this, laddie? Stop asking pointless questions. And I'm sorry, I don't like dredging up these painful memories for everyone. Can you no just stay away? No, leave me alone and then they come back, yay? Well, I'm not leaving yet. How'd you come no can boot that, laddie? There's no many folk even in the prison who've heard of those papers. Ah, well, I can't tell him, Mr. Vigil told me.
I'm afraid our source must be remained confidential, sir.
We've been led to believe that the papers are actually a last will and testament. Is that right? And the professor's, or rather, Genshin Asogi's. Aye, that's right. You're well informed, Jimmy. No, it was at the end of the silent treatment. And then after the convict's execution, it mysteriously vanished from his cell, didn't it? Heavens no, you're off at half-cocked there. Think you didn't quite get your facts straight. It was there in the cell, exactly where it should have been. Oh, not what we heard elsewhere. Let me just have a wee hulk around here. I'm sure I can find it. Aye, here you are. See? The last will and testament of Genshin Asogi, written with a calligraphy brush. And of course, I cannot read a word of those Japanese squiggles. From in mind, it says he leaves all his worldly possessions to his son back in his homeland.
Yes, that's correct. That's the gist of it.
So these are the Asogi papers. Aye, of course they are. Papers written by Asogi, and they do about it. There's no mystery here, laddie. That's your lot. I don't believe it. Fake. Fake papers. After all the straw mash of that slicer of an execution, we sent the man's possessions back to his clan in Japan, and that was the end of it.
I think we ought to make a record of this, Mr. Naruhodo, just in case.
I would like to investigate that. One thing before you go on your way, Mr. Naruhodo. Well, one thing before your one thing is I'd like to investigate some stuff in the court record. Where is Jigoku? Jigoku might be dead. I'm looking for hidden messages that like write out like male Strongheart or something, and I'm not seeing anything. Is Gregson really shady? I don't like it. I don't know, man. I don't believe it. One thing before you go on your way, Mr. Naruto. Oh, yes? Those papers are naught to do with Gregson's death. I'd prefer it if you didn't make no mention of them outside his office. Or rather... Now, wouldn't they just prefer it? Consider it an order from the highest levels of our government? And I understand. No guarantees, boy.
Mama! Mama! Mama, can I cut up the Japanese boy?
Apparently I can't. Yo, what's up, Strongheart? You up to something in here? You up to something in here. Hey, Strongheart, you wanna give me permission to go talk to Mariah Gory? Who needs Mariah Carey? You can have Mariah Gory. Or Maria, whatever. Close enough. No arguments, Prosecutor Sogi. You will continue at the trial exactly as I instructed. Is that clear? Perfectly.
It's Kazuma-sama!
Defying Lord Strongheart by the sound of it. He never did know when to back down. Yo, his outfit is so cool, though. Not Strongheart. The nice color on Strongheart, but Cosmo's outfit's dope. On your way now, Sogi. My lord. Hello there. Cosma. Goodbye, Cosma. He left without saying a word. And then this demon is here. I don't know of any person in any Ace Attorney game that has had a sinister sounding theme that has not been evil. I don't know, man. I don't know. Yes, what are you doing here? Oh, well, I was just hoping to ask you a few questions, if you wouldn't mind. and I wanted Van Zeek's trial concluded today. But Prosecutor Sogi's unwelcomed inquiries are going to make it take longer than necessary. Unwelcome inquiries? As a result, I'm losing even more precious time. Currently 2 hours, 55 minutes, and 41 seconds. 42. 43.
Then we must resolve everything before 3 hours have passed, Mr. Naruhodo!
In a miraculous not even 5 minutes. Anyway, I can't let the man's obvious bad mood put me off. I need information. Does Prosecutor Sogi believe that Lord Van Zeeks is the Reaper? I wouldn't know. It was 10 years ago, in that fateful closed trial, that Lord Van Zeeks made a name for himself among the judiciary. But the next trial he fought, he lost. It meant the ringleader of a criminal organization was acquitted, thanks to all the jurors being under duress. But that's awful! The man's freedom was short-lived. He lasted just 3 days.
Yes! Let me see! He died in a rock slide at his place of work, I believe.
Correct. That was the inauguration of the Reaper of the Bailey. And people believed Lord Van Zeeks was responsible. He was brought to trial himself, but it was shown to have been an accident. So he must have had a solid alibi then. Nevertheless, the mysterious deaths continued. In total, 16 persons perished in unusual circumstances, ostensibly at the hand of the Reaper. That's a long run of coincidences.
Well, the Reaper's true identity may well be revealed by this trial.
And the impact that revelation would have on the British public cannot be understated. Is that why it's a closed trial? Precisely. This country hasn't seen a closed trial for 10 years. So the last one was the Professor's, the trial of Genshin Asogi. Correct. Actually, we heard that originally. You were going to prosecute that trial yourself, Lord Strongheart. Van Zeeks entreated me to relinquish the prosecution to him, that he might avenge his brother's death. And here we are, 10 years later, with the son of the man Van Zeeks had condemned now looking to avenge his father's death in the same way. They do say that what goes around comes around. However, it would seem that the new young prosecutor is harboring some ulterior motive as well. Kazuma is. I like my organization to run smoothly in the exact manner that I prescribe. As with this giant clock in here, I won't tolerate a single cog being out of step with the others. Seems like the people that don't listen to Strongheart have bad things happening to them. Hashtag susheart. Ah, so that's what all these gears are about in here. Ironic, the cog in the machine was you the whole time, Strongheart! And if the young man refuses to mesh with other parts of my great machine, then I will be forced to take steps. What do you mean? Susheart! Not something with which you need to concern yourself. In any case, all your questions will be answered tomorrow. Are we gonna re-kill Kazuma? I hope not. Now, I shall have to ask you to excuse me. As of this moment, I've been delayed from attending my next meeting by precisely 3 hours.
Oh my! That is a long time!
And I hold you entirely responsible. Even though we miraculously managed to fit everything into not even 5 minutes? I wonder if you might agree to us, talking with Prosecutor Sogi. Discussions between the defense and the prosecution outside of the courtroom are generally frowned upon. However, I'll make an exception in this case. Now go. You can find him in his office. Oh, thank you.
Let's go see him at once, Mr. Naruto!
Cosmo's my best friend in the world, and I'm really not at all sure I know how to talk to him at the moment. Alright. Alright, so at the prosecutor's office. Oh, there's a new little diorama. So Cosmo also plays Warhammer. So, this is the office of Prosecutor Asogi now, is it?
Cosmo-sama's doing so well for himself.
Even though he's always forced to kneel on the floor, Japanese style, in that dark corner.
It's his habit to sit Seiza style whenever he's working.
Cosmo! I thought it wouldn't be long before you paid me a visit, Ryunosuke. I was right about what I said, wasn't I? Sorry! That you have all the makings of a great defense lawyer. Well, I always believed that you'd fulfill your dream of advocating in the British courts. I just never imagined for 1 second that it would be as a prosecutor.
Seeing you stand in a foreign courtroom, so gallantly realizing your dream, Cosmo-sama, I'm truly happy for you.
And I am truly thankful to you too, Judicial System Mikotoba. Ryunosuke, I always thought it would be fun for you and I to shake up the British legal system a little together. This isn't quite how I envisaged it, but I suppose it's just another twist of fate. I've learned a lot of things during my time in London. About how Susato-san's father himself was a visiting student here once, along with Judge Jigoku, and about what happens with your father. Then you'll have no difficulty in understanding why I had no choice, why I had to find a way to get to Britain as a visiting student myself. Now I want to hear it from you, Kazuma. As you wish, Ryunosuke Naruhodo. Open up your heart. And it's getting on for a year now, since what happened on the SS Buria. Oh my goodness, I just noticed the meme in the ship name. Buria. Like, you're gonna get buried because you died. Some of these puns are taking way too long for me to set in. And then we just have Asashin. And it's like, I want to punt this game. Just kick it. Like, actual punt. Like, physically punt it. Just away. Just get this game away from me. We were heading across the oceans from Japan to Great Britain. When a bizarre series of coincidences led to these tragic events. You know, Case 4 has had some not-so-great proofreading. I've noticed, I think, 3 or 4 typos. But there's a lot of text in here. Makes sense. I thought I'd lost my best friend forever. I must have been unconscious for a long time. When I awoke, I was lying on a bed. It was a narrow little room. There's a posy of flowers by the pillow. It took me a little while to realize that I was in the cabin of a ship. I slipped out of the room, and then headed up onto the deck. Were you already suffering from amnesia at that point? Yes, I didn't know what had happened or where I was. There was just this voice in my head. There was something to do. Something no one else could know about. Go to Great Britain, your task awaits you there. It was a calling I couldn't ignore. It compelled me relentlessly. You know what's also compelling me relentlessly? My knee hurts. I like this chair a lot, but I like to sit kind of cross-legged sometimes. And I've been noticing recently, I think it's just because I've been spending so many hours, like this past month and a half. Like yesterday, I was sitting in this chair for 15 hours. And it's like, I feel like I'm putting a little I think it might actually be a little bit too small. I might need to look and get a new chair, because when I sit, it puts a lot of pressure on my knee, and my knee's been hurting from sitting on it, but also it's uncomfortable for me to just sit normally for too long either. And then also, depending on the way I readjust it, then I'm on my ankle. So just my left ankle and my left knee have been really painful these past couple days, especially last night. I was trying to sleep, trying to pass out, of course, for being here for so long, and only sleeping 3 hours the night before. And it was like, oh, it just hurts. It just hurts. So if you hear, that's what those noises are. Random weird noises you hear in the background, because I've noticed actually listening to some of these episode playbacks. That's just me fidgeting in the chair, smacking into the table, you know, normal stuff. Out on the deck, I saw that I was on a huge steamship and we were docked in a large port.
It must have been Hong Kong!
Yes, it must have been. Presumably just before they were due to carry your body off the ship. I had no idea of the situation, but I did have a feeling that this was in some way my last chance. So I concealed myself among the disembarking passengers and went ashore. And then I disappeared into the crowded streets of that foreign port city, so I could plan my onward journey to Great Britain. Now you gotta imagine how much easier it would have been, like, 100 years ago to, like, do this kind of stuff. Like, there's no way you can, like, sneak on and off ships and stuff and just be a stowaway and stuff anymore, right? There's just too many, like, security cameras and stuff, whereas if you just dodge people, you know, if you just don't get caught, you don't get caught. You're not, like, on video and all different kinds of stuff and alarms and sensors and things like that. And it's crazy to think just technology in general. You know, we take a lot of stuff for granted. It's like, I'm playing a video game that originally was published in Japanese like 3 years ago on a computer, speaking into a filter that makes my voice sound better into this microphone, which this thing records my voice for you guys so that at any point in your lives to play back and experience what I'm experiencing in this exact moment. It's weird. It's weird. But I keep thinking a lot of the stuff in this game, of course, would have been so easy. You just look for fingerprints on the gun, and be like, Van Zieks didn't do it, because there's no glove prints, there's no fingerprints, easy. It'd also probably be really easy to pin murder on other people. They can't even test to see if that was Gregson's blood or animal blood. Technological advancements are nuts. They're even just scientific advancements in this case, but anyways, it was just under a year ago, with all my past memories lost to me, I was left behind in Hong Kong. Everything was foreign to me. The sights, the sounds, the smells. My head reeled. I was truly at a loss. I realized now that I'd escaped as a dead man, with nothing but the clothes on my back. No money, of course.
Oh, how terrifying for you!
Luckily, though, I had 2 feathers in my cap. One being your knowledge of English, I suppose. That's right, and on the back of that, I was able to pick up some work as a deckhand on a cargo ship. Eventually, after calling at countless ports, I finally arrived at Dover. That must have been some 3 months ago now. Your formidable tenacity of purpose showing itself again. I mean, the man had lost his memory and literally had nothing to his name, but he still managed to make his way to London on the opposite side of the world. And of course, I had no idea why I'd moved heaven and earth to get here at that point. So, how did you end up becoming Lord Van Zieks' apprentice, then? That can only be called an extraordinary stroke of luck, really. You see, I was stopped at the border because I had no papers. They took me straight to Scotland Yard. And by sheer coincidence, Lord Strongheart was there to attend a meeting. That's when the second feather in my cap came into play.
Would that have been your knowledge of the law?
Yes, exactly. Lord Strongheart was curious about an Easterner with intimate knowledge of British law. He took me back with him to the Supreme Court and assigned me to the prosecutor's office. And then, 9 days ago, you finally got your memory back after the trial involving Trevor. Yes, I did. Never since I first met you at Yume, you talked about your dream. Mark my words, Rinosuke. I'll be chosen as a visiting student and make my way to Great Britain someday. Did you know the entire time about what happened to your father here? 16 years ago. Aww. He's so cute, look at this small baby. Even has one of the little hair thingies. When my father left on that exciting trip to Great Britain, I was just a boy. We took a photograph together the day before his departure. It's my last memory of him. But what I remember most about my father is his unswerving sense of justice. 6 years after he left, a gentleman called at our family home. He told me that Genshin, my father, had been taken ill in England and passed away. It was Professor Mikotsuba, your father, Susato-san.
Oh my!
Ever since then, the professor was very good to me. He even helped to fund my university education at Yume. I'll forever be in his debt. But nevertheless, I just couldn't bring myself to believe what he told me.
Oh!
Then one day, a letter arrived at our house from Britain. There was no indication of the sender, so I opened it assuming it was from an old acquaintance of my father. What I read in that letter changed my entire life. What did it say? It said that my father had been a mass murderer, and the writer cursed the Asogi name.
Oh no!
As a result of that letter, I found out what had been hidden from me all those years. Presumably, the letter was sent from a relative of one of the victims. If whoever it was had been a member of the judiciary, he could have been present at the closed trial. The letter revealed that my father had been sentenced to death, executed for being a killer. I'm so sorry you had to find out that way. I imagine the British government did its best to silence whoever sent that letter. But someone who knew the truth and couldn't bear the resentment was always going to be a problem.
But still, it could have been written by anyone. Why would you believe such a thing?
There was a newspaper cutting included with the letter. It was the first I'd ever heard of the professor and his terrible killing spree.
Well, what did my father have to say about the letter?
And I couldn't bring myself to show it to him. What? Why not? Because he deliberately concealed the truth from me by telling me my father was taken by a fatal illness. That couldn't have been easy for him, and he'd done it out of consideration for my feelings. So instead, I showed the letter to Judge Jigoku. Ah, to the other visiting students. He faltered for the briefest of moments, but then he just laughed the letter off. But in that moment, I saw it on his face. He was undeniably shocked, shaken momentarily, before recovering his poise. A year later, my bereaved mother succumbed to the strain of grief, and she too passed away. That's when I made up my mind that one day, without fail, I would cross the seas to Britain and seek the truth for myself. The truth about my father, Genshin Asogi. And I wouldn't let anyone stand in my way.
Oh, Kazuma-sama!
What we learned today in courts turned things completely on their head. It was an impressive piece of lawyering, Rinosuke Naruhodo. Lord Van Zeeks isn't the Reaper, you know. I almost don't want to believe it myself, but it turns out that Inspector Gregson himself, the victim, was... It's clear that the inspector was behind the Reaper's activity all along. What? You mean, you knew? The real question is, who's been giving orders to the inspector? Yes, Brock Van Zeeks is the real Reaper. And I know that 10 years ago, it was him who decided my father must be a mass murderer and sent him to his grave.
No! He was merely seeing that justice was done as the law dictates. He's not to blame.
Ultimately, as people who condemn people, the law is just a tool they use to do it. And when a man condemns another, he must take responsibility for his actions. Of course he must. But I know for certain that my father would never have taken another man's life. Kazuma, On the contrary, my father's life was taken by the Reaper. Cosma, what do you make of this? Alright, so we can't present things to him. Alright. I was wondering why we have the picture. I thought maybe it'd be cool to show it, but... Gina here? No. How do we unlock? How do we unlock the... Mama! I feel like this wasn't finished, but... What the? It's a scale model of the crime scene. Oh, yes, I realize that. Does the prosecution office make a model of the scene for every single case? Apparently so. Sometimes it helps to visualize things better and notice things you hadn't spotted before. Actually, a miniature notice board is my work. Be honest, you enjoyed making that. Spooky bats again. You disturbed the bats, did you? Fitting companions of Lord Van Zeek's, wouldn't you say? Actually, I've seen things flying in Lord Strongheart's office too. Doves, I think. Perhaps you have to like birds to retain rank in the judiciary here. Although bats aren't birds, of course. How about a sparrow for you? What's that supposed to mean? Oh, nothing, sorry. Just thinking out loud. Why won't it let me click on this? There's Lord Van Zeek's incredibly stylish desk. It's not my style, though. No, I noticed you've been working at the little table on the floor, kneeling down Seiza style. And I thought it was some kind of punishment set up by Lord Van Zeek's when I first saw it. And I find it the most comfortable way to work. And I can't do it. After a couple minutes of sitting with my legs folded under me, they start to go tingly. Don't exaggerate, Renosuke. We both know you can't even manage a minute. Roasted. I feel like we must have to present something here, right? I mean, we presented both of those. We haven't been here in a while. Hey, Iris, what's up? Okay. Well, at least he seems to be on the mend.
You know, his disguise as Mr. Gossip was really quite masterful, wasn't it?
I can't remember anything about it except for the floppy lip.
I imagine not even his wife would have recognized him.
Perhaps, but did he really have to take it quite so far? I was hoping to present the papers. That way, if he could confirm whether or not they look the same, but they're written in Japanese, so I mean that doesn't particularly help. Huh, so what should we do here? Let's think. What have we done? We need to find a way to get to Mariah Gorey. Right? That's what we're trying to do. So we set out here in this episode to talk to, obviously, Mr. Vigil here. Talked to him, got the papers, went into the prison. And then we talked to Van Zeeks as well. We talked to Lord Strongheart, gave us permission to talk to Kazuma. I feel like we have to do something more with Kazuma, right? He didn't take those last two items, I don't know. Alright, because everything's done here. Doesn't care about the picture either. I mean, this has to do with Maria. I keep wanting to call her Mariah. Yeah, no time of death. Oh. Okay. And this came up in the trial, didn't it? Something a little dubious, I mean. The fact that no time of death was recorded on Inspector Gregson's autopsy report. Yes, there was some unexpected turns in the courtroom earlier. The suggestion you came up with certainly took everyone by surprise. The idea that the victim died the previous day at some other location is quite something. Well, considering when the pocket watch had stopped and the scorch marks on the candle, it's certainly a distinct possibility. The evidence in the scene both point to it. To be honest, it bothered me too. So I paid a visit to the autopsy room earlier. And the coroner responsible wasn't there, but I got a name. It's Dr. Gory.
If it wouldn't trouble you, Kazuma-sama, we'd very much like to speak with the coroner too.
Of course, the last thing I want is for anything to be brushed under the carpet. Scotland Yard's autopsy laboratory is behind Lowgate Cemetery. Lowgates? By Barclay Prison, you mean? You know it, do you? The prison where my father was incarcerated and robbed of his life.
Kazuma-sama!
Well, thank you. We'll pay a visit to the laboratory later today. Alright. Woo, we've unlocked the, Ryunosuke, I want to thank you. What for? For this. You safeguarded the soul of the Asogi clan. Well, it is a famous sword that's been in your family for generations. My only slight regret is I never got the chance to draw it before I returned it to you. Karama is said to have been forged by a master swordsmith during the Sengoku Warring States period. I come from a long lineage of warriors, many of whom were expert swordsmen. Well then, you're a chip off the old block, I'd say. This blade, Karama, is the symbol of the Asogi clan's honor and might. Apparently, one of my father's apprentices even took the blade's name for his surname. Really? Karama? And it does sound formidable, that's for sure. 16 years ago, when my father was a visiting student here in London, he had this sword forever to side. So yeah, part of me wonders if that's an Easter egg for the Von Karmas. Probably not, but... Karama. Von Karma. And still, I love this soundtrack so much. "16 years ago, when my father was a visiting student here in London, he had this sword forever to side. Which is why it means so much to me that I have it by my side again now, too. And that is all thanks to you. It was an honor." Now, I have preparations to make for tomorrow. Perhaps I said a little too much. Kazuma, you've changed. No, Ryunosuke, I haven't changed at all. It's you who's changed. And I can completely understand your resentment of Lord Van Zeek's given what happened. But the fact is, those events in this case are, well, unrelated. Is that what you want to say? How can you be so sure? What do you mean? Never mind. That man is the Reaper, and it's for that reason that the inspector was killed. And I'm going to prove as much in court tomorrow. By whatever means necessary. And I can't let you do that, Kazuma. And I know you'll do what you have to as a lawyer. But I'm sure I don't need to tell you that I won't be taking any prisoners in the courtroom. I would expect nothing less. Until tomorrow, then, in the Old Bailey. Alright, now we can go. Alright, that feels like it's been resolved. That's been resolved, so... Alright, she's got some cute decorations. She likes to knit. She's got a little cat. I like the little plague mask thing here. The question is if she's going to be wearing a mask or not, is still be wearing the mask or not. Oh, Iris is back with us now. This place is really creepy, isn't it?
Well, being a dead room, it's probably full of the spirits of the dissected. But actually, there's a rather pleasant scent of roses in the air. Well, being a dead room. The coroner probably needs a bold scent like that to mask the odor of death.
Iris, Do you think we could change the subject? Don't like the noise. I don't like that. What? What was that? Dr. Gory?
What?
That noise before.
Mama! I was sharpening my tools. I'd be dead meat if I didn't keep a perfectly keen edge on them.
Right.
When following the collagen fibers in the dermis, an expertly sharpened scalpel cuts like cheese. Would you like a demonstration?
Oh, yes, please. I'd love to see.
Then, I think you'll do nicely.
Huh? No, I wouldn't do nicely at all. I mean, maybe some other time. Was that a taunt? Well, we came here to ask questions, so...
Mama!
We have actually met before. I'm a lawyer, if you remember.
You're not dead yet.
What?
So Mama said I wasn't to cut you open. She's so strict about things like that.
Wow, good. Dr. Scythe has some scruples, at least. Oh dear! It looks like she's not interested in talking to us. For the time being, anyway. For the time being, you mean? Until we die? I hope that's a way off. Sorry, but I wasn't planning on dying anytime soon. Surely there's some less drastic way of making her listen. Dr. Gory, we actually came here to ask you about this.
He was very good.
Good? Sorry.
His skin didn't snag my blade once, and very little mess. His joints dislocated easily, and his muscle tissue was a pleasure to work with.
We can skip those details. But there's one thing about the report that's caught my attention. You don't seem to have recorded a time of death. I like her little stuffed animals.
That's not my fault.
Oh, that made me jump.
And please, tell us what happened.
She looks like an emo Bratz doll. So, why doesn't this autopsy report include the victim's time of death, then? It's really the most crucial detail.
I was told not to write it.
What? By whom? Huh? Really? Yo, where'd that come from? Oops, I minimized the window.
By Mail Strongheart, the Lord Chief Justice. He came here.
Lord Strongheart came?
He said that from the witness statements about the gunshot and the other evidence, it was obvious. The man clearly died at 5 p.m. on 1st November, when the gunshot was heard. But that's not the time of death he wrote on the reports. You didn't write anything. Was there some reason you didn't include it?
Dr. Gory, if you're hiding something under Lord Strongheart's instructions, then sooner or later, you're going to go the same way as your mother.
Give it here, then.
Hmm? What's she scribbling so furiously?
There.
You've written.
What? What'd What's she written? Tell us, Bruno.
Indeterminate.
But
What do you mean by that? Why was the time of death indeterminate?
when the specimen was brought in, it was still fresh. So the time of death could easily have been coincided with when the gunshot was heard. But there was one small discrepancy.
What discrepancy?
There was some fried fish in the pocket of the specimen's overcoat. Then that fish had started to rot.
What?
If the victim liked fried fish, he presumably liked to eat it before it went off.
Well, yes. What are you trying to say?
It's possible that someone tried to manipulate the apparent time of death. Mama!
Manipulate the... Is that even possible to do?
Theoretically, if you were to chill the body on ice, you could delay the onset of putrefaction. And if the overcoat wasn't on the body at the time,
Then only the fish would have started to rot.
with today's science, it's not yet possible to determine if the body was chilled or not.
But today's science is advanced enough to let you freeze a corpse, it seems.
But surely, to chill a corpse like that would require an enormous electrical refrigerator. And I don't imagine many households in London are equipped with such a device.
No, definitely not. But maybe in a factory or some other special places.
I don't recall seeing any factories or such like on Fresno Street, though. I wonder if the inspector's body had been chilled somehow. What might the actual time of death have been? I couldn't say for sure. But at the most, it might have been a day earlier.
No.
In other words, it would corroborate your previous deduction, Mr. Naruhodo. That Inspector Gregson was killed a day before his body was discovered at a different location.
Did you inform Lord Strongheart of this possibility?
He simply said there were no electrical refrigerators of that size in the vicinity.
No, yes, one other thing. Seems the governor of Barclay Prison told us. He said that your mother, Dr. Scythe, was responsible for confirming the death of the professor after his execution.
The professor...
And apparently, you always enjoyed listening to your mother's stories about her work, so we were wondering if you might know something about what happened 10 years ago.
That's not all Mama did.
I'm sorry.
My Mama carried out the autopsy of Clint Van Zeeks as well.
What? Really? The brother of Lord Van Zeeks, the professor's final victim.
The idea of carrying out an autopsy on a member of aristocracy was completely unthinkable back then. But the detective in charge of the investigation insisted, and it was miraculously authorized. That detective being Inspector Gregson, of course.
Quite an accomplishment for one man.
That autopsy provided a vital clue needed to arrest the killer. And Mama was there for that historic event.
What does all this mean?
You know, that amazing autopsy happened right here in this very room. The professor and Clint Van Zeeks. They both spent their final moments before their burial on that dissection table there. So this lab, Mama's lab, was instrumental in some of the country's most important events.
She really is proud of her mother. She also sounds kind of unhinged. And I wonder if you'd tell us more about what happened back then, Dr. Gorey. How old is she? I'm very bad at guesstimating people's ages. Okay, so even though she is a doctor, she's not. Okay, this is what I was in line with. I'm like, she looks like she's like under 22. This looks like a 12-year-old. How old is Beppo? We don't know. Ancient. As in Beppo's ancient, not Mr. Daly here. Iris is 10. Sholmes is 34. Would not have guessed that. Also would not have guessed you at 33. Gina's 18. Oi! I don't know. No, Evie's 36. We don't know. We don't know. The gossip entry's still in here. But alright, Maria Gory. Now I wonder if you tell us more about exactly what happened back then, Dr. Gory. I want to examine your stuffed animals first. This looks different to before.
Of course, Mr. Naruhodo! Miss Gory is a young maiden! She has all sorts of charming little dolls and the like around her place of work, look!
No, yes, you're right. Perhaps she's not so strange after all.
They're how I practice.
Sorry?
Mama always says that operations and dissections require speed and accuracy. So I take out my needle and thread and stitch 3 new dolls every day.
Ah, right.
I used to make livers or kidneys or intestines, but Mama told me to make something more friendly instead. That's quite different to what I'd imagined.
No, so those get cut up. Look at all the bottles on the shelves in these cabinets. No. The salt and pepper once again.
The professor's execution was Mama's first big case. She had to be in attendance at Barclay Prison's execution chamber and sign the certificate to confirm the convict's death. Mama's the best coroner in the world, you know. I was so proud of her.
But the execution didn't actually take place.
No, and worse still, Mama actually helped with the jailbreak. And I didn't want to know. Oh dear, you found out recently, you mean? I believed in her, in Mama, but now I wonder if I'm starting down the same path as her.
You mean because you omitted the time of death on his autopsy report? But that's because Lord Strongheart forbade you from including it.
Just like Mama, I'm sure she was coerced by somebody too.
Yes, that's my feeling as well.
There's no doubt there were more powerful forces at play 10 years ago. The execution couldn't have been staged without a lot of people at the prison knowing about it. Obviously, the prison governor must have been in on it as well.
The big man with the little handcuffs, according to what he told us. He was tricked by the chief warder. He says he knew nothing about it.
Of course he said that. I'd say the same thing.
Just who was behind that jailbreak all those years ago? You mentioned the autopsy of Clint Van Zeeks.
It was at the time when carrying out autopsies of murder victims was very unusual. It's still not a practice that's observed in our country, even now. It turned out that he was the professor's final victim, and when the autopsy was performed, Mama was present, although only as the secondary assistant. The person leading the procedure was called Dr. John H. Wilson.
That's right, my daddy! Look, I'm not turning the camera back on for this, but I'm genuinely shocked. So just over the years, just people with relation to this case are just getting picked off. I mean, you can only squander the truth for so long. Now, it looks like you didn't pick them off fast enough, because now we're here determined to find the truth. Man. Ooh. Interesting. Was this information we should have already known? Because I, for one, am shocked.
And there was one other person present, the primary assistant. He was a visiting student from the Far East.
Wait, a visiting student?
It must have been my father, Eugene Mikotoba.
and I had no idea Professor Mikotaba had been involved in something so important.
But the outcome of that historic autopsy was the discovery of a vital piece of evidence that led to the capture of the professor.
So that's how they came to identify Genshin Asogi as the infamous mass murderer. Do you happen to know anything about that piece of evidence? Can you tell us any more?
Would you like to see the records for yourself?
What? Would that be all right?
What's the point of keeping records if people can't look at them? They're filed under V at the back of those cupboards, with the other records from the last decade.
Thank you. Let's see. Van Zeeks. That's strange.
What, Mr. Naruhodo?
They aren't here. There's nothing under Van Zeeks.
That must be.
Perhaps somebody took them away.
No one's allowed to take documents related to the professor case out of this room. But you're right, they're gone.
Wow, when was the last time somebody looked at them? Do you remember?
It was... Oh yes, I remember now. It was 2 years ago. A consulting detective came one day saying that he'd like to see the records.
No, you don't mean...
Herlock Sholmes was his name.
Deep down, I knew that was coming.
Do you think he stole the records? Oh no, surely not! Iris, that can't be right, can it?
Iris?
Bruno? I hope you don't mind, but...
What is it, Iris?
I've just remembered something very important I have to do. I'm gonna have to leave you now. Oh, this is very sudden, Iris. Well, we'll come with you then. Oh no, there's no need. You and Bruno can take your time here. Bye for now then. Good luck.
Skedaddled.
Wait a minute, little girl. Me? I remember now. You've been here before, haven't you?
Have you, Iris?
Yeah, it's 2 years ago when that detective came. You were with him, weren't you? You were a living specimen then, too.
That's the way it usually works, yes. Was I? I really don't remember. Anyway, sorry, but I must dash. Wait, Iris. I'll brew up a pot for you when you get home. What's the matter with her? She's behaving really strangely all of a sudden. Well, in that case, we won't keep you any longer either.
It's been quite a while since I had any visitors. This was really fun. But next time you come, I'd prefer it if you were really ready for dissection.
I can't make any promises, sorry. It's a bit strange that the records of Clint Van Zeeks' autopsy have disappeared. But I think we've asked all that we came to ask now. Where'd those two run off to? Alright, interesting. Alright, so we asked everything we needed of Maria, not Mariah. Alright. One thing we haven't done, we haven't found Gina. I wonder if Gina is... We haven't... I mean, we went here, but there's nothing. Okay, so it looks like there's something here now. The police are still busily investigating in here, then.
But Gina's nowhere to be seen! Where is she?
Yes, it has been blissfully quiet, hasn't it? Perhaps she's out investigating on her own, practicing what her boss taught her.
Well, I expect she'll be back before too long. Shall we wait?
And actually, there's something different about this room since the last time we were here. Yeah, there's a trunk on the floor.
We could always use the time to investigate more thoroughly.
Yeah, let me... This little trunk wasn't here before, was it?
No, it appears to be made of metal. It must be very heavy. I wonder to whom it belongs.
There are some initials on the outside. Look, TG. Let's ask one of the policemen if they know how it came to be here. Oi, what do you think you're doing? That's my trunk, that is. Hands off.
Gina!
Where are you hiding? I don't know. You leave something unattended for a few seconds and every Tom, Dick, and Harry's got his greedy eyes on it. Just a wild guess, Gina, but... What? Spit it out, Odo. Is it fair to say that you've only owned that trunk since this morning's trial? What? What you trying to say? Come on, this trunk goes with me everywhere. Always has, wherever you been the last year. Try not to incur your wrath, mainly. You should hear them talking at the yard now. They should be ashamed of themselves. They're saying that it was the boss who killed all them bludgers. Ah, you mean the whole Reaper thing? Yeah? Apparently, the boss was investigating stuff that no one else at the yard knew nothing about. Stuff to do with all them criminals what got off scot-free. Yes, the ones prosecuted by Lord Van Zeeks who used bribery and corruption to evade conviction. Well then, obviously, it was that bloomin' Reaper giving the orders, weren't it? But why would people be suspecting Inspector Gregson of being involved in the killings? There was a notebook hidden in his office? Oh no, this doesn't sound good. It had details about all the crimes that have been pegged as the Reaper's what? What?
No! Did you see it, Gina? Did you see that notebook?
They wouldn't flame and let me, because I'm just an apprentice apparently. But it was me who found it, and he was my boss.
That's right!
I was pretty miffed about it, so I sneaked a peek at what it said anyway.
Oh!
That's our Gina. So, you managed to see what was written in Gregson's secret notebook anyway, did you? The way I see it, it's my right to read what he wrote.
And what did he written, Gina?
Dates, times, places, names, and a whole long list of them. All details about the bludgers supposed to have been done in by the Reaper.
But there could be an explanation for that. Perhaps there's a record of the inspector's investigations into the Reaper's activities.
Exactly, that's what I said. That's the first thing you'd think, right? I mean, that's what I think too, but... Is Gregson real? I don't think so. I don't think Gregson would be like that. As it happens, it was full of names I recognized anyway. Well, Reaper's targets were almost exclusively known. Leaders of London's criminal underworld. Well, yeah, but there was one name right at the end that was a bit odd. At the end of the list, you mean? I'm pretty sure the date against it was 31st October.
Oh, the day before the inspector was found dead.
So, what was the odd name? More like a name I've ever seen before. It was something like, Maelstrom Up. Nah, it's no good. I can't remember it. I don't think it was an English name, put it that way.
Oh dear! What a pity!
There was something else too. I don't know if it matters, but the same name kept coming up over and over. Chin, it was. Don't suppose it means anything, but... Did you say Chin? Eh? What? Does it mean something? Well, Van Zeeks knew the name too. He mentioned her as well. And the woman who actually did the deeds. And now, we find out her name appeared in Gregson's secret notebook. We haven't seen you for a little while, have we, Gina? Well, of course not. Been busy, ain't I? Investigating in it. The lads at the yard are trying to trace the boss's movements the day before it happened. The day before? That would be the undercover investigation through the Red-Headed League, then. Only the boss didn't go, did he? You found some cove what was pretending to be him, didn't you, Odo? Yes, it was Mr. Vigil who actually went to the park on Lime Street that day, posing as Gregson. Well, anyway, you ain't the only one turning stuff up. Got me own ways of getting results. Stealing it, you know. Well, me and my partner here get together, there's nothing we can't track down.
Oh, little Toby, he's such a faithful friend.
Alright. I'm glad we saw the return of Toby, because I'd be like, it'd be so weird if Toby only shows up for like 30 minutes and then just gets ignored. So, have you tracked anything down then? What you think, eh? Of course we have. Can't tell you though, police business, isn't it? Nah. Anyway, the point is, if you lot ever need any help, you know who to turn to, right? Me and the hellhound here. Right. Because he looks oh so hellish, honest. Gina, what about your hellhound there? Chief Inspector Toby, you mean? He's the pride of the force, he is.
In Japanese, police dog means something quite different, and not altogether nice to those involved in crime. But here in Britain, it's a wonderful compliment, it seems, for a canine at least.
It should be. After all, in the great exhibition case the other day, it was Toby here who managed to locate Jepper's workshop. Maybe it's time for another demonstration of what this super dog can do, eh? Do we have something the Chief Inspector could catch the scent of, I wonder? The wig, maybe? It was on Gregson's person.
Take that!
Well, Chief Inspector Toby, if you wouldn't mind having a sniff of this. He might be a little too keen, don't you think? And the Chief Inspector made short work of Gina there. Ah, look what he's gone to.
Oh my! That trunk clearly still has a very strong scent of Inspector Gregson.
In other words, it must have belonged to him. Hey, that's my trunk now. Oh, alright. It's a fair cop, I suppose. You nearly got away with it, too.
You always talk so proudly of Chief Inspector Toby's nose and what it can achieve. Did it not cross your mind that he might identify something that was right next to us?
Yeah, that was a bit of a bloomer, wasn't it? That's enough now then, Gina. Eh? And I think it's time you told us the truth about that trunk. It weren't like that, it just went. What are you talking about? I know what's going on through that head of yours, but that ain't what happened. Alright then, what did happen? Well, like I said before, we were trying to trace the boss's movements. So I let Toby here have a whiff of the boss's overcoat. And as soon as I'd done that, he went off like a shot. Straight to that sandwich. To a sandwich, not to a bag of chips.
Mr. Naruhodo, I believe Gina means the witness.
No, Beppo. Oh, I forgot about that sandwich. Yeah, he had it in between them wooden boards of his, the boss's trunk. You mean, when they heard the sound like a gunshot and all piled in here? Exactly, he nabbed it from the scene.
Goodness!
Me and the Chief Inspector gave that sandwich a good grilling, and you know what he said? I thought it might fetch a good price and the chap wouldn't be needing it anymore, so.
but that's all I did. Nothing more, nothing less. Would you add in me with the cheek of it, eh? Stealing the dead boss's stuff to flog?
So Miss Venus wasn't the only one to meddle with the scene of the crime then.
How could they? So anyway, that's how it happened.
And it's a pretty decent trunk, so I figured I might as well make use of it. Is there something wrong with that, eh?
Well,
maybe you and Mr. Sandwich should try to find the answer to that question together.
I think perhaps that trunk should be turned over to the police, don't you think?
What you on about? I am the police. Gina, if you wouldn't mind, could we maybe examine it?
Yeah, alright then.
Do what you want with it.
Thank you! We shall make a detailed record of our examination of the evidence.
Uh-oh. What's the matter with Toby? Why is he acting so aggressively towards me all of a sudden?
Mr. Naruhodo, be careful! It must be the trunk!
Toby, oh, what are you doing? You're gonna lick his face off.
Mr. Naruhodo! Mr. Naruhodo!
Gina!
Gina, quickly! Hail a carriage!
Why'd we get mauled by Toby?
Oh, Mr. Naruhodo, are you alright?
Mrs. Sato.
Conscious again at last, a blessed relief, my dear fellow. After all, to drop dead after a moderate licking by a small terrier, most unseemly.
What is or isn't unseemly is irrelevant here, Mr. Sholmes. I'm so glad there's no lasting damage. How are you feeling?
I'm fine, thank you. Did you bring me back here? Nah, what's this on my head? A bandage.
Sadly, we had no ice, so that's a compress of sugar water.
Sugar water?
Don't worry, Mr. Naruhodo. It's a first aid treatment that my father taught me.
Oh, thank you.
So, let us take tea when you're feeling up to it. But of course, no sugar in the patient's cup.
Ugh, the bump on my head is throbbing sweetly enough, don't worry. Funnily enough, I too have a bump on my head. And then one of the doors earlier got caught on my foot and I smacked, when I was... And it wouldn't open because I didn't realize it was caught on my shoe. So I pulled harder and then my foot moved out of the way and it smacked me in my temple. Ugh. That hurt for a good, 20 minutes.
Hehe, whenever you feel ready then.
Let's have a look inside. Look, there's something inside.
Ooh, let's see. It appears to be a passport, authorizing him to travel overseas.
Was Inspector Gregson about to go on a trip abroad then?
Perhaps the date of departure might tell us something. That was... Oh!
What is it?
It was for travel on October 31st, just one day before the incident.
What? Really? Gregson went to France the day before his body was discovered. Have you seen this huge gash across the side of the trunk here? It's gone right through the leather and into the metal behind.
Gosh, for a metal chest like this to have been so badly damaged. Whatever made the gash must have struck the side of the trunk with considerable force.
And I wonder how it happened. Look at this dark stain here. Do you think?
Yes, I'm afraid so. I think it's blood.
Ugh, I knew you were going to say that. So that presumably means...
that this was present at the scene when Inspector Gregson was killed. It's the most logical conclusion, yes.
To think Gina's been carrying this around with her. And if you didn't know any better, I suppose it does look a lot like a grease stain from all the fish and chips. Alright. Did you see that? There's something stuck in the side of the trunk there. It's glinting.
It looks like a fragment of metal of some sort. But it's wedged in so tightly I can't remove it.
Well, don't cut yourself. You'd better leave it, I think. Alright, so we inspected the trunk. I'll talk with you later. I want to go finish up. I'm tired of switching around between stuff and then not finishing. Let's go see Gina. Be like, Gina, we didn't finish that. I want an apology from Toby. Got attacked by Toby? You gonna apologize? Gina, I'm really sorry. Oh, Gina's just crying in the corner. It's daft, isn't it? You asked me a year ago that cops could go hang for all I cared. But we've got to have police, ain't we? To catch the bludgers. So us divers can go about our business in peace. Wait, sorry? I don't think I can have heard that properly. He said he was gonna teach me everything I need to know to be a detective. But all he got around to showing me is where's the best flaming fish and chip shops are. Actually, that reminds me. Gregson said he was supposed to be going to Paris in the near future, didn't he? Is something wrong?
Oh, no. I'm sure I'm reading too much into things. It's just that the timing seems very coincidental.
You know, the boss was acting a bit strange recently. Like he was always in a rush. What's this? Achievement unlocked. Best chips in town. Is that it? Alright, well. Hey, I got an achievement. Achievements are nice. No, that's not what I wanted to do. Go back up here. Thank you for your concern, Mr. Sholmes.
My dear fellow, think nothing of it. I must say I was quite startled when I heard that you'd been attacked by a dog. For a moment, I feared that the infamous murderer of somebody had come back from the dead.
You mean the professor?
Fortunately, I see your prized throat is unscathed. That stiff, turned-up collar of yours obviously afforded some welcome protection.
Was I that close to death? And all I really remember is the dog licking my face over and over and over again.
Well, if you wish to avoid such troubles in the future, a little mustard spread on the cheeks should do the trick. And I should think that would balance the sweetness of your bandage rather splendidly.
Was that it? Was that it? Is that all I talked to you for? Sholmes, you're a giant pain in the neck. Humongous pain in the neck.
The steam is rising gently from the kettle as always.
Yes, it doesn't feel right somehow unless it is.
But the steam has
an unusual scent today.
Perhaps the sweet potatoes that I brought back from Japan with me are ready. Oh, Mr. Naruhodo, I heard that, you know.
Tears of joy, Miss Susato, from my mouth. Whenever you serve me tea, it always takes me back to Japan.
I know you're not particularly fond of the bitter taste, are you? And I do always try to pick out less bitter matcha for you.
She does often serve up an unusually mellow blend, it's true. But the anticipation of the taste in my mouth makes me bitterly worried anyway.
It is very difficult for you, isn't it?
Where I clicked on all this stuff in here, huh? Guess we didn't click on the fish tank.
All the sea life seem to be very content in there, I must say.
I've noticed something recently, actually. The anemones breed at the most extraordinary rates.
Oh, really?
It's a mystery. Why, the whole seabed isn't buried in a mountain of them, actually.
Oh, how splendid! That really is a mystery, isn't it?
I wish there was someone here to explain Susanto-san's strange reaction to that. Where'd Iris run off to?
Mit dem Schwarzbiergebot brodelt Wien Feuerberg.
What the heck? Why is Susanto's dad passed out on the couch? What on earth is going on in here? Am I having a bad dream? The tea set's broken, he's passed out, Iris is sad.
No, it's an old German folk song. A rather fine rendition, I think.
That's the least of my concerns.
Iris?
Iris, what's the matter?
Who is that sprawling, that relaxed gentleman over there?
Iris? Is she even listening?
Excuse me, sir. I do apologize for troubling you whilst you're singing so merrily, but would you be kind enough to explain the situation?
Well, that worked.
A crooning gentleman and a mute young girl. A rather tantalizing juxtaposition. And one that appears to have incited the gods of deduction within me to find their voices, too.
Ah, Mr. Sholmes, do you mean?
The strains of reasoning within me are playing now as a delightful duet. One melody sings of a reunion full of nostalgia, whilst the other is a morose theme about the great secret you're trying so desperately to conceal, Iris.
She's turned as white as a sheet.
So as usual, you've instantly seen through the very heart of the matter.
And by the time my own brief performance is over, I feel sure this gentleman's song will reach its finale. So then, to music land where all sweetness and delicacy and harmony. Pray, do enjoy Herlock Sholmes' latest logic and reasoning spectacular.
The game is afoot. Man's identity. That's literally just Susanto's father with a blanket and the mask on.
Firstly, we consider the gentleman's nationality. Clearly, he's a German with no grasp of the English language. As evidenced by the Germanic song he sings and his apparent inability to understand when asked to desist. So, why is the man here at all, in such an apparently high spirits? The answer, of course, Iris, is clearly known to you. Indeed, we need only follow the gaze of those bright young eyes to unravel our particular part of the mystery. The reason for the man's mildly irritating warbling is revealed by the herbal tea.
Iris made him an extra special blend.
You obviously offered our German guest a cup of your latest herbal blend. The tea's delectable flavor has made the man's spirits soar, and then resulted in this joyful ditty tumbling incessantly from his lips. I eagerly await sampling the flavor myself that I may join the fellow in his state of elation. Now to the next question. Who exactly is this gentleman availing himself so thoroughly of the SETI? As it happens, a number of years ago now, a certain gentleman of German origin engaged my services in solving a particularly delicate case. He required the retrieval of letters when sent to an acquaintance that might have proved problematic. In order to conceal his noble identity, he also arrived at my office in a mask. The gentleman's name was Wilhelm Gottfried Sigmundsson von Ormstein, the King of Germany. If my memory serves, the mask worn by this gentleman is identical. Yes, there could be no question that mask belongs to the King of Germany. It would appear that His Majesty remembers the fine service I afforded him, and has decided to show his face again, mask and all, in order to express his gratitude. A well-mannered monarch indeed, wouldn't you agree, my dear fellow? So the identity of this masked visitor is in fact my former client, the King of Germany. Indeed, his son is currently in London as well, enjoying the wonders of the Great Exhibition.
After this was done, I was going to ask, is that the full name of the demon child? The Zorro-looking child. Alright, so we got the King of Germany drunk on the couch.
Which leaves us with one remaining imponderable. Yes, young you, Iris. But your apparently inexplicable silence is unable to hide the truth. Yes, the reason for your muteness is concealed inside that knapsack. The 5-pound note, I believe, I must say, as your compatriot, I'm deeply saddened. It would appear that you've allowed yourself to be bribed into silence by His Royal Highness, earning yourself some spending money in exchange for keeping quiet about the king's secret. And now, the final piece of the puzzle. What is this secret you strive to hide with your silence, Iris?
I like this interaction, this is cute.
Yes, we need only follow that brief involuntary twitch of your eye to find the answer. You were attempting to abscond with that coffee cup. My favorite coffee cup, in fact. Or should I say the handle of my favorite coffee cup. It appears that His High-Spirited Highness broke it in the midst of his hijinks. Which leads us to the sad truth. My favorite coffee cup has been broken by the King of Germany, and Iris, you tried to conceal it from me. I shall have a bill sent via governmental channels to the German royal family for its replacement. Thus concludes Herlock Sholm's great deduction of this painful puzzle.
Mit dem Schwarzbiergebot, Boden, Wien, Feuerberg.
With your silence as well, the fellow's jovial warbling rather rings in the ears, does it not?
Mr. Sholmes, I must say something does rather trouble me.
Bray, Miss Susato, do tell.
His Royal Highness doesn't appear to have moved the muscles since we've arrived.
Nah.
And you haven't said a word either, Iris. If Mr. Sholmes has it all right, you might as well own up to it now.
Your reasoning isn't entirely without substance, I must admit.
And one other thing, Mr. Sholmes.
Yet another grievance, Mr. Naruhodo, surely not.
Well, I actually read the story of that case recently, and you were the one you were just describing. And according to that at least, it wasn't the King of Germany. It was the King of Bohemia.
Goodness, was it?
Yes, that's quite true. Master Gotz, the prince, testified to that in court. His words, I have come to see the great exhibition all the way from my home in Bohemia.
I would ask you to keep that minor error to yourselves. It could easily become quite a scandal.
I believe, Mr. Naruhodo, that it's our turn now to make some corrections to a number of minor errors that may have slipped in.
Yes, even Mr. Sholmes is willing to admit he might be slightly wide of the mark this time. Although it's clear that Iris is definitely hiding something. We need to find out the truth behind this mysterious scene.
More one truth is incontrovertible. My favorite coffee cup is no more. So, shall we embark again? On a joint presentation of Herlock Sholmes' Logic and Reasoning Spectacular.
Course correction. Hold it, Mr. Sholmes. So what? Is this a mix of herbs that gives you the urge to sing?
Goodness, I should like to try some.
And I'd like to hear you singing, but this man, just how long does he intend to keep up with that tune, do you suppose?
As I said, he's been stock still the entire time, and if you look closely, his lips aren't moving either.
Ah,
So I'm not sure what's actually responsible for the spirited singing, but I suspect the answer lies at the end of Iris's gaze.
wait, this...
It's a gramophone, still rarely seen in our own country.
Her mit dem Schwarzbierchen.
This sound certainly appears to be coming from the horn.
The machine's singing, that can't be right.
Science and technology are changing the world rapidly, Mr. Naruhodo. What's right is changing too.
Ugh, it's too much for my brain.
Well, at least we found our answer.
Take that!
The reason for the man's mildly irritating warbling is revealed by the gramophone.
Indeed, for no well-bred gentleman would break into an obscure folk song when making a social call. In other words, this gentleman isn't singing at all. In fact, it would appear that the fellow is unconscious.
Hat wie ein Diamant.
Ah, the music seems to have stopped now.
I ask you, Mr. Naruhodo,
Yes?
why would I have purchased a recording of that gibberish?
How should I know?
Well, never mind, on with the deduction. Who exactly is this gentleman availing himself so thoroughly on the SETI?
Yeah, totally, the King of Germany. And although we've already established that it was actually the King of Bohemia,
It seems Mr. Sholmes intends to persist with his Germany theory for some reason.
come to think of it, the young prince was wearing a mask as well, wasn't he?
Master Gotts, the boy whom you had in tears?
Don't remind me, or anyone else.
Do you suppose all the members of the aristocracy of mainland Europe wear masks?
I'm sure they do. Well, probably, anyway. The point is, that mask doesn't belong to any king.
No, that's right, as we well know, because we can identify the true owner of this mask.
Take that!
Yes, there can be no question. That mask belongs to Cosmo Asogi.
In other words, my memory is sublimely unreliable.
Only you could try to make that sound positive. Cosmo's mask has been languishing on this metal chest for several days. Though that doesn't explain why the gentleman is wearing it now.
But it is now a simple matter to determine our guest's true identity. After all, the gentleman is unconscious. We need only excuse ourselves in advance, gently lift the mask, and peer beneath it.
I don't believe it.
Ah! Father! Father!
I'm afraid, Miss Susato, you must be mistaken.
No, I think not, Mr. Sholmes.
Then it would appear our logic and reasoning has once again revealed the truth. This mysterious visitor
Is my unconscious father, Yuji Mikotoba.
Logic and reasoning, or just looking and saying.
which leaves us with one remaining imponderable. Yes, you, young Iris,
So that's a 5-pound note poking out from Iris's knapsack, is it?
Oh dear! I can't be sure. Most money that we encounter is in coin form.
I know. I'm not even sure if we've seen any banknotes here in Britain at all. Have we?
But anyway, Father would never have paid money for Iris's silence.
He certainly seems like the silent type himself, though, judging by his present state. There must be some other reason for Iris's silence, I suppose. Perhaps what Iris is trying so hard not to give away with her eyes is something entirely different.
This metal chest, it contains important documents, doesn't it?
Yes, details of all the cases Mr. Sholmes has worked on over the years. Written up by Iris's father, if I'm remembering correctly. Iris insists that the chest is kept locked at all times. She's never once shown me inside.
Well, its contents are invaluable to her, I suppose, and entirely irreplaceable. But look at it now. The catch is unlocked for once.
Ah, so it is. That's hard to ignore.
Very. I've never seen that chest unlocked before in all the time we've been staying here at Baker Street.
Take that!
Yes, the reason for your muteness is concealed inside that metal chest.
An excellent observation, for upon closer inspection there is something different about the chest's appearance. It's kept locked at all times, yet now the catch is open. Evidently, this has something to do with your refusal to speak, Iris. But it is a simple enough matter to incite you to speak, I'm sure.
I merely need to open this chest.
Here we go.
No, Hurley, don't.
Ah! Mr. Sholmes!
Mr. Sholmes, Hurley!
That's a glorious image. He's dead.
Never! Oh, Hurley, I told you not to open it.
Ah, so you found your voice now, Iris.
Ah!
In other words, what just happened clearly reveals the truth here. Yes, the real reason for your silence until now is...
This is somewhat different to the usual dance of deduction you perform with Mr. Sholmes, isn't it?
Well, he's left me alone on the ballroom floor, so I'm going to have to dance this next part solo. And anyway, I need to get to the bottom of this, for my own peace of mind. Now then, Iris isn't usually the silent type, so...
You mean you don't actually know the answer yet? Despite that knowing the point of the finger before?
Mrs. Sato, sometimes a man needs to point his finger first and think later.
Oh, well, if you say so. I think we better examine Iris more closely and try to rescue the situation then.
For some reason, this knapsack is really standing out as suspicious to me today.
Oh, is it?
It's quite sizable enough for a sizable secret, that's what I say.
Perhaps it is, but we certainly can't open it up to look inside without Iris's permission.
No, you're right. Who knows when might pop out and punch us. This is a very cool look at the room. That's a key she's holding, look. I'm sure that wasn't in her hands before, was it?
No, you're quite right. It's appeared, as if by magic.
That's strange, a big old iron key. Where did it materialize from?
Take that!
Was it in her mouth? Yes, the real reason for your silence until now is that key behind your back. Ah! Mr. Sholmes was thrown into the air before. Just before you called out to try to stop him, you slipped something out of your mouth. That something is the key now in your hands. No doubt, it's the key to the chest.
You're so clever, Rudo.
So now it becomes clear. Thanks to Mr. Shulm's graphic demonstration, we can well imagine what happened here.
But
Professor Mikoltaba also opened that metal chest, only to be punched in the air and land sprawled on the settee.
But wait! That doesn't explain all the facts! What about the stylish scarf? And the cup of tea? And above all, why would he be wearing Cosmosol's mask?
Well, for those curious details, I can think of only one explanation. Clearly, an unbelievable miracle took place in this room. Isn't that right, Iris? Consider how the room was arranged before this whole painful experience took place. When Professor Mikoltaba opened the chest, completely unaware of what awaited him inside, the mask was flung into the air just as he was, only to land neatly on his face when it fell back down. And the teacup's journey through the air ended when it caught on the unconscious professor's finger.
You mean to say that the stylish scarf?
It is actually just a tablecloth. This is the great detective's office, after all, a place of miraculous deductions. Would you expect anything less? Why are we bullying Iris? I mean, I love that Susato's involved, but why are we picking on Iris?
Yes, you're right. It happened exactly as you said. Brilliant, Rudo.
Thus concludes Ryunosuke Naruhodo's great deduction of this punchy puzzle.
So then, why don't make you a fresh pot of tea for us all?
Objection!
An admirable performance, Mr. Naruhodo. But in the final act of the show there, you rather missed everything of importance.
Mr. Sholmes,
If you would cast your mind back to my earlier deduction. Iris, clearly you're hiding a great secret.
Ah! She is, from the look on her face. Mr. Sholmes must be right. Whatever that great secret in the cat isn't out of the bag yet.
So I put it to you again. You were attempting to abscond with that coffee cup.
It really is a shame about Mr. Sholmes' cup. It must have been smashed when Professor Mikoltaba opened the chest.
Oh dear! So many things seem to have been broken here.
But now that the deduction has taken a different direction, Iris doesn't seem to be trying to hide the broken cup anymore.
In other words, her great secret is something else.
Let's put our observational skills to work here one final time then. Ah, look! There seem to be more papers there. Is Iris trying to hide them underneath the tray?
The insignia, Mr. Naruhodo! It's an official Scotland Yard document!
What? But why would Iris have...
We must ask her!
An official Scotland Yard document?
Take that!
You're attempting to abscond with that case file.
Iris, as you know very well, nothing escapes the attention of a great detective.
Oh no!
We visited Scotland Yard's autopsy laboratory earlier today, and Dr. Gorey informed us that the autopsy report of Clint Van Zeeks had gone missing.
Clint Van Zeeks? Yes, I do seem to recall. That some years ago I asked to see the report in question. You were with me, weren't you, Iris?
You mean it was you, Iris? So those papers you have there are...
I'm sorry. Forgive me.
Aw, Iris stole the papers.
In truth, I would like to have thought I could have predicted the booby-trapped chest, but it caught me completely off guard, and I was very nearly late consulting Detective Herlock Sholmes.
I'm sorry, Hurley.
So you mean this autopsy report really is...
Yes, I took it from the lab, even though I knew it was very important.
Wasn't there something in it that troubled you, Iris?
Not exactly something that troubled me. Something I'd been looking for. When I saw this report, when I saw the writing in it, I knew it was Daddy's.
The writing?
Your father's writing? What do you really mean?
Iris? Must be something that's hard for her to talk about.
Forgive me for interrupting, my dear fellows.
Mr. Sholmes, what is it?
I feel as though the poor unconscious gentleman on the settee has been somewhat forgotten.
Father!
Perhaps we should find our guest somewhere more peaceful to rest. Mr. Naruhodo,
Yes?
would you be so kind as to lend him your bed? We must do our very best to make him comfortable, I feel.
Oh, yes, of course. I'll help you carry him up.
So will I!
No, I can manage alone, thank you. You have tea to enjoy. We wouldn't want Iris's brew to stew.
Because there's no better way to make the professor comfortable than dragging him upstairs like a trunk. I wonder, perhaps that was deliberate. Maybe Mr. Sholmes is making himself scarce to give Iris the chance to talk more freely.
We must use this opportunity to talk with Iris and find out what's going on.
Would you like to tell us about it, Iris? About your father?
I'm sure I told you before, didn't I? That Daddy used to be Hurley's partner. Yes, and that notes about all the cases they solved together are kept inside the metal chest. That's right. Hurley told me, you see? He said that Daddy's somewhere far, far away now, so we can't meet.
That's one way of describing it.
Then, when I secretly unlocked the chest and read through the papers inside, and I started to build up a picture in my head of what Daddy must be like.
Well, that's only natural.
You're just like any other girl of your age. I read that Daddy was a professor of medical science, so I studied and took my degree, too.
Well, that's only natural, I suppose.
In that respect, you're not quite like any other girl of your age, though. But there was one thing that I could never find out. Daddy's name. His name wasn't anywhere on any of the notes that he made about his work with Hurley. But then one day...
That's what happens, is it? When you saw those autopsy reports, you finally managed to work it out. Is that right?
Yes.
So it was the handwriting in the reports that caught your eye.
When I saw the writing on that report, I could hardly believe it. I know that handwriting, I thought to myself.
Because it was the same as the writing you'd seen on your father's case notes.
Exactly. I was desperate to compare the two properly. I needed to see them side by side. I asked the doctor in the laboratory, but I was told I couldn't take the report away. And even worse, I was told that was the first and last time we'd be allowed to even look at it there.
So you decided to steal it.
When I compared the autopsy report with the case notes I had here, there was no doubt. The handwriting was exactly the same. It was Daddy's. And the signature of the coroner at the bottom of the autopsy reports
read Dr. John H. Wilson.
So that's how I finally found out. I learned Daddy's name at last.
Why would Sholmes not tell you his name? I see.
Ever since then, I've called myself Iris Wilson. That's also when I had the brilliant idea of writing stories all about Daddy's exciting times with Hurley. I decided there and then I'll write the adventures of Herlock Sholmes.
Oh, Iris, I had no idea the stories had quite such a deep personal significance for you.
And I can see why the autopsy report was so important to her now. And why she was prepared to break the law to get her hands on it.
I must apologize, Iris. This is really all my fault.
Early.
I made a promise, you see, that until the time was right, I'd keep the details about your father a secret.
I know. I've been very naughty. I'll take the autopsy report back to Dr. Gorey and apologize, I promise.
Yes, we'll go together, I think.
Then, let me look after it for you until we get there.
Recent scarlet ink stains visible on the little and ring fingers of the right hand, but no documents in corresponding ink was found. Vital evidence recovered from the victim's stomach during autopsy. Stab wound to the heart. Indicative of a duel. But I thought he was killed by a dog. I must go and water my herbs, I think. I'll see you all later. Poor Iris, she must be feeling awful. And I know Sholmes is here for her, but still. Ah!
What? How? What's the meaning of this, Mr. Sholmes?
Mr. Sholmes?
No, dear me. So, you've noticed, I see.
But that would mean...
What on earth's the matter, Miss Susato? You've turned as white as a sheet.
It's this autopsy report, Mr. Naruto. The one from 10 years ago. The writing. Isn't Dr. Wilson's at all.
Huh? What do you mean? How could you possibly know that?
Because I know this writing very well. This writing. It's my father's.
What? Professor Mikotoba?
Indeed, it's true. And now you know, my dear fellows.
No, I don't know anything. What on earth does all of this mean, Mr. Sholmes? Because the idea that's slowly forming in my mind, it's just too extraordinary to believe. Please, you have to explain. So, this autopsy report was actually penned by Professor Mikotoba, then? That makes no sense. It's not possible, surely.
Not possible, my dear fellow. Pray, take a deep breath and think again.
Yes, you're right. In some ways, it actually makes a great deal of sense.
It does?
10 years ago is when Father returned to Japan after his extended study tour in Britain.
And then prior to his return, where was Dr. Mikotoba engaged?
Ah, of course. He was an assistant in Dr. Wilson's laboratory learning about forensic science.
And as an assistant, he would have aided with the dissection work, making detailed notes, which would be assembled into the full autopsy report. Once the work was complete, the head coroner would check the contents and put a signature on the document.
In other words, the only writing of Dr. Wilson's in the reports would be his signature at the end.
I see. So Iris got the wrong end of the stick, you mean? She saw that and assumed the whole report had been written by Dr. John H. Wilson.
Which is very understandable, of course.
What a complicated situation. Thinking about it, most of what we know about you, Mr. Sholmes, comes from the published stories of your exploits. Yes, The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes, written by Iris.
And we really have no way of knowing what's fact and what's fiction.
Most troubling for you, my dear fellow, I'm sure.
So what about this supposed partner of yours? Did he really exist or not?
Nah, you've come straight to the point, I see.
And please come straight to the answer.
I believe Iris explained it in one of her installments. He was a trusted comrade, and the only person I could have truly called a friend.
And did this partner of yours truly make a record of all your cases? Are his notes really stored inside that metal chest?
Absolutely, my dear madam. Absolutely.
So, where's your partner now?
We rarely meet. You see, he lives on the other side of the world.
But if this autopsy report and the records of all your old cases were penned by the same hands, and if the autopsy report was written, though not signed, by your famous partner, there would be only one logical conclusion.
Pray, impress me.
Your partner would have been Yuji Makotaba. In other words, Miss Susato's father.
Upon my word, Mr. Naruhodo.
Yes?
You are coming along wonderfully. You've hit upon the method at last. You've finally grasped the art of deduction.
You mean to say?
Allow me to introduce you to my great friend and partner, Mikotaba.
Professor Mikotaba?
Does this mean that you're the real Dr. Wilson?
No, my dear. I'm still my old self, Yuji Mikotaba, your father.
Oh, of course.
This is obviously too much for Susato-san to take in. I must say, though, how my old friend has attained worldwide celebrity as a great mystery solver is the greatest mystery of all.
I still remember the first time we met. Pray remind me, when was it again, Mikotaba?
16 years ago, Sholmes.
Yes, quite. 16 years ago.
I just arrived in Japan with Seishiro and Genshin. I was in search of lodgings close to the hospital, some comfortable rooms at a reasonable price.
But rents are devilishly high in that particular area.
That's right, so I decided I needed someone to share lodgings and the expense. I was fortunate enough to be introduced to Sholmes, who found himself in a similar situation.
I was a kello fellow back then, a mere shadow of the great detective you see before you now. And I was working at the hospital's chemical laboratory, at the time indulging my curiosities for little gain.
And the situation of our cohabitation led us to pursuing cases together, you see. Hard to believe. It was a mere 6 years. We had a great many adventures.
But in the last year of Mikotaba's stay in Britain, that most infamous of cases presented itself. A case with which you've become rather familiar yourselves, the professor killings.
After the trial, Seishiro and I were summoned back home. Hardly surprising, given the circumstances.
So there you have it. And as you know, all the details recorded by my trusty chronicler remain in that metal chest.
This is just amazing. Professor Mikotaba really is Mr. Sholmes' famous partner. But then who's Iris' dad?
Father!
Goodness, my dear, what a cutting look.
As your daughter, I'm very proud to learn that you are the great detective's great partner. But nevertheless, there's another mystery that I really must ask you to explain now.
And that is?
You know very well what it is. The unresolved matter of Iris' father.
Ah, of course. I'd almost forgotten about that one. I should have seen this coming, I suppose.
Iris told us that all the notes about the great detective's adventures are in that metal chest. Were written by her father. Isn't that correct, Mr. Sholmes?
That is indeed what I told young Iris.
But if you're Mr. Sholmes' partner, Father, and you wrote all those case notes, then Iris's father must be you.
Nah! Upon my word, Miss Susato.
You are coming along wonderfully as well. You two have hit upon the method at last. You finally grasped the art of deduction.
What? What you've always told me, Father, is that my mother died when I was born 16 years ago, and you left me in grandmother's care whilst you embarked on your study tour of Britain. And I've always accepted that. But all this about Iris.
Oh, there it is, Susato-san's ice-cold stare.
No, now hold on a minute. Yep, it was very complicated. I mean, it's really not what you think. And perhaps you'd like to explain exactly what it is.
There it is. Now the ice girl from ice cold to red hot, just before she...
No, really, you've got the wrong end of the stick.
Sholmes, say something, man.
That's quite enough, my fiery fellows.
Mr. Sholmes, when did you get all dressed up?
Whilst I don't like to interrupt this exciting exploration of the past, Mikotoba and I have an urgent matter that requires a short excursion.
But it's very late, Mr. Sholmes. Where must you go?
Why, my dear madam? Is that not obvious? My partner and I must pursue our natural enemies. So, get your coat, Mikotoba. The game is afoot.
But Sholmes, I really must give Susato a full explanation, I think.
Later, my dear fellow, later. Our carriage awaits downstairs already.
You haven't changed one iota, have you? I mean, really, I visit her home after 10 long years. And when I open that chest in a fit of nostalgia, I quite inexplicably pass out. As if that wasn't enough, when I eventually regain consciousness, I'm plunged straight into all of this. Father, please! Go with Mr. Sholmes now! What? I have no doubt that whatever happens, you are acting in everyone's best interests. I trust you, completely. Susato. And sending the great detective and his great partner off on a renewed adventures together is more than I could have hoped for in my wildest dreams. Very well then, we'll speak again later.
So, I believe your own work is done for the day. And I wish you the best of luck tomorrow.
Yes, Naruto. Good luck in battle. And in reaching a decision.
A decision? About whether to go back to Japan, I suppose.
So much happened that day that I barely knew what to do with myself. It would only be later that I'd come to realize how amidst the chaos I'd unleashed were all the clues I needed to finally unearth the truth. And that all the turmoil was necessary to give me the resolve to see everything through.
Ah, great Ace Attorney to resolve. The legendary pair. All right. There is a lot going on in here. The resolve of Ryunosuke Naruhodo. And that's the final one. Ooh. All right. Well, I wasn't expecting that. I wasn't expecting that at all. For Professor Mikotoba to be Sholmes' buddy. I mean, now looking back, I suppose it does make a lot of sense. The question is, who is Iris' dad? Is Sholmes actually Iris' dad? Who is Iris? Now I feel bad for Iris. Iris' whole identity, everything she's built her life around, has actually just been copying Susato's dad. But I don't know, man. I feel for Iris. So, was Dr. John H. Wilson not Iris' dad? Is Iris' dad not dead? Is Iris' dad Lord Strongheart? I don't know. But, man, I feel for Iris. So I guess it's good we didn't tell her dad's dead, because it might not be her dad. We have no clue who Iris' father is. And also, curious how we're going to get out of court tomorrow with... I mean, tomorrow, in-game tomorrow. Not our tomorrow. Tomorrow's an alley chat, but... How are we going to get out of court proving that Van Zieks didn't do it? Cosmo's really pushing for turning this course into kind of a case more into a reinvestigation of the professor case, which I'm all for. There's so many questions to be answered about that. But yeah, I think I'm 110% locked in here on Susshart. Just don't know why we haven't had anything happen to us yet, but I mean, covering up a lot of murders, picking people off over time is something that, especially if you're trying to get away with it, you gotta take your time with it. So it looks like he just might be against the clock. Assassin. To pick off Wilson, who was involved here. Gregson got picked off. I mean, you can't really kill Van Zeek, so I guess they're trying to just get him executed that way. It's unraveling about Dr. Scythe, and now Strongheart's whispering in Dr. Gory's ear. Ah, man, there's so much going on here that I can't wait. Can't wait to get into the next episode. The only unfortunate thing about these 3-hour episodes is we go through so much, it's hard for me to, at the end, go over more than what just happened in, like, the past hour or so, just because it's honestly, like, 3 hours ago. That's kind of a while. But, yeah, we talked to Cosma, and Cosma wanting to find out, just pursuing the truth. Is it true that his father was the serial killer? And I'm still leaning towards no. I want to know what the evidence found inside the stomach was. I want to find what's that little notes on the autopsy report of Clint about there being a document with red ink that was not able to be located. I want to know what that's about. And the Asogi papers, that was something also important we touched upon here. And potentially Kaiden's involvement in the cover-up of the non-execution. And why was he escaping and all these kinds of stuff. I'm certainly very hopeful that we uncover answers to this by the end of the game. I mean, I'm certain we'll get there, but I'd hate for it to be like, haha, Great Ace Attorney 3 coming 2030, cliffhanger for 10 years. Be like, no! But yeah, I mean, at this point, I'll talk with you guys in the comments. I really don't have much else for this end of case here. It's not our typical end of episode, Twisted Karma in his last bow. Not our typical end here. This is continuing into case 5 here, the final one, the resolve of Ryunosuke Naruhodo. So I'm curious. It says all the clues we need have been presented, so I'll definitely be thinking on this, because I do have a couple days before I record the next episode. I did do a back-to-back, so it's pretty late for me here tonight. Not ridiculous, it's late, but I've been talking for like 5 hours. So, because I have the stream on Friday, of course, and then Saturday, and then I'll come and record for Monday's episode. This is Saturday for you guys now. Record Monday's episode on Sunday, because we do have that alley chat tomorrow. So, gonna be a couple days. Definitely want to think over, formulate some more theories and stuff like that. So I hope I remembered to check in with you guys at the beginning of next episode, because this has been absolutely a blast, so I hope you guys have been enjoying it too. If you have, don't forget to go ahead and hit that like button. Comments from me, like I said, I want to discuss with you guys about this episode down below. So leave your thoughts, theories, and everything else down there. And of course, if you're not yet part of the not Titan Cards family, that's not the right channel. But if you're not part of the Alley's Treasure Trove family, make sure you go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Also, before, of course, I get out of this episode, do have to give a big shout out to all of our patrons over on Patreon. Thank you so much, you all, for your above and beyond support. I really, truly do appreciate it. Do have 5 Ultimate Excavators: Jack Prez, Keith Mura, Mako, Mark Mardini, and Stephen Olivo. 2 Gemstone Miners, and then Stephen Bly, and 1 Crystal Collector of John Michek. But thank you so much to all of my patrons, whether I mentioned your name at the end of every video or not. Really, truly do appreciate your guys' above and beyond support. So with that, that'll do it for me here today. A lot of investigating here, but I feel like we really got a lot. So was Gregson even in the country? The thing is, that's weird about that too. That's another thing I didn't think of. All that with Gregson and that passports. Gregson was saying he wanted to take Gina with him. Now I think we understand why he wanted to take Gina with him. Yeah, that doesn't make sense. There's no way. All right, end here. There's no way that Gregson was involved with the Reaper, because he was researching into the Reaper. I think Gregson was trying to make sure that Gina wasn't going to get murdered. And that's why he was taken with her to France. Like, if Gregson was involved in doing the Reaper shenanigans, then he would just choose not to kill Gina. You know what I mean? Because it doesn't seem like going to a different country stops anything, because, John H. Wilson got picked off in Japan. Assassin traveled across the world to go do it. Yeah, so I'm like, no way. This we can't actually be going with Gregson being part of the Reaper team, or whatever you want to call it. Yeah, no way. I don't believe it. Tarnishing Gregson's name here. Gina doesn't believe it. I don't believe it. The boss would never do something like that. I don't believe it, and I hope you guys don't believe it. So let me know whether you believe it down below, because I just, yeah, that doesn't make sense. The way it's been spinning here is trying to be like, really get us to believe that Gregson was involved. I think Van Zieks is on to something, but I think he's extrapolating that Gregson is part of the Reaper, whatever you want to call it, Reaper Syndicate, sure. But he was actually just looking into it and trying to, I think Gregson, that's what he was doing on his own. And that's why he was doing it on his own, is because he knew if Scotland Yard knew, someone in their Scotland Yard is the Reaper. So if they found out, then he'd be killed. And unfortunately, they found out. Okay. I mean, it could just be that Gregson was doing it, but I don't believe it. All right, so let me know that down below. But with that does actually now finish off this episode. So thank you so much for watching, everybody. And I hope you'll join me next time as we delve even deeper. If we go any more deeper, we're gonna hit the mantle. I think we probably are in the mantle. We're way past the crust. We've dug really deep. We might hit the outer core if we keep digging deeper, but I hope you'll join me next time for that. But that does it for me here. I hope you guys are really enjoying things. Take care, stay safe, and I'll catch you in the next episode. Bye!